Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. It's time for Canada again. But today we have a special guest with us. And we have, is this the first time Wyatt and Daniel are together? Wyatt's been on the podcast individually, Daniel, obviously, multiple times. Wyatt, you guys have never been together, right?
Well, we
No,
podcast
no.
together much, but not here.
Not here,
Yeah.
not on this platform, never, right?
I think the last time I almost thought maybe, but no, I was just like super chatting and things while you guys were live. So I was like technically
Yeah.
felt like I was.
Yeah.
You see, there you go. It's an endorsement of your podcast. I felt like I was part of the conversation while just watching it.
And yeah, I still remember the mission that Daniel and I have: get Wyatt to dance.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Still not
the mission you have. I said no. If you remember, I have like $10,000 on the fact that no one will be able to get Wyatt to dance. That's where my money is. So you're trying to get
Daniel
Wyatt to dance. I'm just trying to keep the universe in the same state of
It is
stability that it
maintaining
always
the
has
balance
been.
of the universe. So for those who don't know, this podcast actually covers elections consistently. I have my dear friend who lives in the United States of America, Adit Kapadia, and Adit and I actually do regular election podcasts. So we do even municipal elections in India, state elections in India, and obviously the central, which is federal elections in Canada. We've covered American elections in the past, and then I was like, hey, this podcast is officially an Indo-Canadian podcast now, so why not start covering Canadian elections too? So this is our very first attempt, and I want to make this announcement officially that every time consistently I'm going to get Wyatt and Daniel together, and we're going to make a consistent effort to discuss elections in Canada now. And this is the perfect opportunity because Wyatt was very actively involved in the recently concluded election in British Columbia. So today, Wyatt, you're going to be the focus of everything and you're going to do a lot of talking. But just two requests for you. I know we're going to be approaching it from a Canadian perspective, but every time you talk about something, do me the extra favor and just keep that in mind that Indians may not know how things happen in Canada. So just do that 1 minute bit extra for explaining it to Indians, because I literally have achieved the impossible. I have split my audience, especially for this playlist, which is called Canada. It is 50% Canadian, 50% Indians. So it's very weird what we have over here.
That actually is legitimately extremely impressive because I know so many Canadian YouTubers who destroy their audiences because they start trying to talk about American politics like half the time and then Canadian politics, and they get a bunch of American viewers, and then the Americans don't care about Canadian stuff, and then so the entire channel dies because half the subscribers don't even watch half the content ever, and so it shows their watch hours going down hard. But yeah, I'll stick to I'll play a bit of teacher today too.
Yeah. So my first question.
And for Indians out there and Canadians, British Columbia is the closest thing to India in Canada that we have. So this is basically an Indian election.
The Surrey section of the election is literally an Indian election, effectively.
Yes.
Yeah. So so my first request to you is I'll explain why Indians might get confused, the Indian listener base, because in India when we do elections, right, let's say the BJP, Congress, or any political outfit, when they're contesting an election, right, so what happens is the central leadership, the state leadership, and the municipal leadership, they're all the same, controlled by the same outfit. But that's not the case in Canada, right? You have different leaderships and different political outfits, even though they're called conservative in Canada, right? They have nothing to do with the federal party in many occasions.
They officially have nothing to do with the etiquette, but they're unofficially like.
It's more consistent with the conservatives that the conservative and liberal parties don't have as much to do with each other. That's why liberal parties these days are even trying to change their names, like the former BC Liberals tried to change their names to BC United. This is getting a little bit into the whole, like, setting the stage of what happened in British Columbia.
Please explain.
I'll get into that in a bit. But I was going to say the one party that actually is fairly unified across Canada is the NDP, because they have this weird rule where even though in Alberta I need to buy a United Conservative Party of Alberta membership and a federal Conservative membership, you as an NDP provincial or federal member, you basically are a member of the party federally as well as the party that you live in provincially. They actually, all the provincial parties are technically subsidiaries of the federal one, which creates a lot of stupid legal issues for them. And also, it always makes it hard for them to say that I'm not with Jagmeet Singh when Jagmeet Singh ends up becoming a drag on a party's popularity, like he is in most provinces when it comes to the NDP. And because the NDP is so lockstep, that's also why NDP in like the Maritimes, Eastern Canadian, fishing type provinces, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, PEI, the NDP is almost dead out there. And it's because they have to lockstep progressive policy with the NDP federally. And oddly enough, the Maritimes are actually a very socially conservative but somewhat fiscally liberal area of Canada. And so the NDP out there is too fiscally left wing for people, but they're also way too progressive for people, so they get like 6% in elections. It's nothing, even though the NDP out west is actually quite powerful.
So, from what I've understood, in the NDP, even if you are from a province, provincial level, you can still have a say in the federal politics, right? Like the membership is the same. That's what. So, explain the membership process. What is membership in Canadian elections? I know it sounds, you're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, you're going to make me explain these basics, but please do that so that people are more alert and aware of the entire process.
And this is what actually has to be explained to Americans quite a bit about Canadian parties, because in America, you register as a Republican, a Democrat, independent. You can even register as a Green or Libertarian. And so you have a right to be a member of a party. In Canada, you don't. They operate more like private clubs. So you have to go out and purchase sometimes it's $5, $10. Sometimes parties make their memberships free, but you have to voluntarily take out a membership that can expire in order to be able to, get onto a local party board, or in order to run for that party, in order to go to their conventions, all sorts of stuff. And with the NDP, when you buy a provincial membership for the BC NDP, you also automatically have a federal membership for the federal NDP. This has actually created problems in Alberta, where the Alberta NDP is being sued for defamation by somebody right now. And at one point, a judge looked at the case. They're like, technically, the Alberta NDP doesn't actually exist. It's just like a bank account that says Alberta NDP, but the legal entity is still the federal party. So then they had to figure out if the Alberta NDP has to decouple itself and re-register. It's an entire bag of cats right now for the NDP around the country, as this fact about how the party has operated has finally caught up with them and started creating legal problems, because you can't have, because usually, obviously, a federal party, let's just say, could never transfer money to a provincial party. It's two different jurisdictions, but with the federal NDP and the provincial NDP often operating as sort of the same party, it means that they're actually sharing costs back and forth in a way that's not technically legal sometimes. Although I think it's more one of those things, it's too complicated to even talk about. So Elections Canada and the different provincial election bodies don't really even look into it too much.
All right. So I have one more follow-up question. Sorry, Daniel, I'm taking so much time, but I hope you understand. I'm just trying
no. Listen, I think this is good. Listen, I think there's a lot of Indians getting some stuff out of this, but I think there's also Canadians sneakily listening along, being like, oh yeah, how does our election system work again?
Yeah. So let's say I want to be a member of the Conservative Party of Canada. Can I, question number one, can I become a member of any party? Let's say I want to be a member of the Liberal Party too. Are the systems of membership varying from party to party? That is question number one. And let's say I'm a permanent resident, like in my case, I may not be a Canadian citizen, but I want to be active in Canadian life, right? I want to contribute as a positive member of society. So can I also become a member, let's say, if for a party that I'm politically inclined to? And also, can I do that at any given time of the year, irrespective of whether there is an election or not?
Yeah, so with permanent residents, or I'll start from the beginning. So most parties, the memberships pretty much work the same. Sometimes they have different rules on the party revoking your membership for certain things, or certain parties when you purchase a membership. And Liberal Party, for instance, I believe they're actually still free to just take out a 1-year membership with the Liberal Party. It tends to actually be a big donor party, so they don't usually nickel and dime their way into campaign funds the way that the Conservatives and the NDP do by soliciting people for $100 donations. They can go down Bay Street and get $1,700 donations from a lot of people, so they make their memberships free. Conservative parties, because they actually have usually more grassroots engagement in nominations, they charge $15 per for a membership for 1 year. It's not tax deductible unless you buy 2 years, because for some reason Election Canada makes the fee for a single year membership that must be spent on like internal party paperwork. It can't be spent on anything election related. It's very complicated. But when it comes to permanent residents, as well as people who are not voting age, can become members of political parties and have influence over who ends up becoming the candidates for those parties by being able to vote in nomination races. So I've run in a nomination race in Calgary Signal Hill. I, in fact, was very close to winning that nomination, but because Canadian political parties run as private clubs, I was kicked out 2.5 weeks before the actual vote happened because they were trying to shove through another guy. They even kicked out somebody else from the race who used to be the deputy premier of Alberta, Leela Ahir. Jokes on them, because I still made sure that the guy that they were trying to crown still lost anyways, and it was very embarrassing for
I know Leela personally.
Yeah, it was very embarrassing for people in the party when they tried to shove this one other former MLA into the position. And at some point, the party's upper board, it gets very complicated, but a small sliver of the board's involved in approving you to run for a nomination. I'd already been running for like a year and a half, put over 1,200 hours into campaigning. I was probably either the top or like the second highest in terms of support or membership sales. And I had a very high chance of getting people to number 2 votes, because in nominations, it works by rank ballot. You mark people in order for who you like the best. And as your options are eliminated, your vote then goes to the next person in that rank. And so when they eliminated me, it was just a small sliver of the board who got rid of me, but then the rest of the board actually sympathized with myself and Leela. And so they forced a recount after the nomination vote happened on a Saturday. And the guy that somebody in the party was trying to jam through, a lot of political allies, they thought he was, I don't know what, it doesn't really even matter. They just wanted him over me. He won by a single vote on a Saturday, and then the board forced the recount, and he lost by 7 the next Sunday. Yeah,
I love it.
There's certain people who hate my guts because of that. But it's fairly pathetic when you're an upper level party advisor and you get your butt kicked by a 24-year-old. But regardless, because I just basically started organizing a large portion of my supporters to just vote down ballot anybody but the guy that they were trying to jam through, and it ended up working out pretty well. And so regardless, though, getting back to it, a lot of problems in nominations, not in mine. Mine's in an overwhelmingly white suburban type riding. We had like 5,200 memberships sold in our nomination, or active members who could have voted. That's a pretty massive nomination in Canada. But the reason why permanent residents actually end up becoming this big problem in Canadian elections is, although they can't vote in actual elections, 80% of seats are pretty much predetermined going into an election, that it's a safe seat. The party always wins it. There's no chance they're going to lose it this time. And when nominations, 14-year-old permanent residents can vote in them, that starts causing problems when you can just walk into different institutions and sell 300 memberships in one night to people who are apathetic to even voting, but a community organizer told them they have to, and then they jam through some guy who's maybe not quite, a little unscrupulous in how he does things. And then it allows also for more extreme elements. And this is all over the place.
I wonder who uses that a lot in Canada.
Well, literally everyone. Literally all of them. I mean, yeah, we could say calisthenics because that's the big ones in BC. But
they mastered the art. They mastered the art.
The CCP does it with federal Liberal nominees around Richmond.
That's a Hong thing. Yeah,
Hendong, that's in Toronto, but a lot of shenanigans happen with a lot of community politics, and it even happens, frankly, even within with actual Canadian citizens, with certain elements in a riding that are, if they ran a candidate normally, like let's say a municipal race where nobody's from a party, their guy would probably get clobbered, but 300 of them can all buy memberships, and they might only be the only 300 people who have a specific belief. But if they all vote in the nomination, 300 is a massive amount of votes. I know nominations that have gone on for the Conservatives And these aren't sketchy nominations at all. Most nominations aren't sketchy, although this cycle, it's a little bit.
In Canada, there's no law against them, so any nomination can theoretically become a banana republic at any moment. Yeah, like,
and the problem is that
they all are, but they all could be, which is a problem.
Judges can't step in because unless a party, any party, specifically says that this is the way a nomination has to happen, unless you can point to a rule in the Conservative Party saying that they can't, in any party saying that they can't rig it or engineer it or kick you out for any reason, then they're allowed to do it. And that's the problem, is that because they're run as private clubs, you can do whatever you want. And so that allows for just like, you can just blatantly appoint people, which effectively is, in my mind at least, the more honest way of doing it. Just appoint the guy and say, I wanted him. And then people can be mad at you, rather than having this kabuki theater where somebody was nominated by party members, but 3 people were kicked out in the nomination. Some guy probably heavily overspent how much he was allowed to spend. Party staffers were basically given memberships to go and vote. I had, and with the guy I was fighting in Signal Hill, I heard spent massively over the limit, and they were having like provincial party staffers going around calling people for him in a federal nomination. They had UCP MLAs calling for him. It was completely nuts what was going on, and it's just not fair. And if anything, it's very telling that you're running a guy, or you're having, if he wasn't good enough to win the nomination, why should he be the guy running in the general election? But you can get away with it because so many of these seats are safe that you can do what you want. But getting back to it, there's a lot of nominations where the entire thing is decided by 400 votes. Only 400 people voted, and that it's a safe seat for this cycle. And this is how just having a small community of permanent residents who don't have a secure footing in Canada as non-citizens can be very easily bullied into voting a certain way in order to get somebody through who the average middle-class Canadian probably wouldn't have voted for if they walked up to their door and tried to pitch them joining a party to support them.
So let's bring this to British Columbia, where this seemed
to
play.
I really want to appreciate this. This was a great explainer. Thank you. So now Daniel, you take over. Now bring in British Columbia.
Yeah, this is a good thing, because British Columbia, what we're looking at is the results were 47 was the majority of seats to get. So it was 46 for the NDP, 45 for the Conservatives, 2 for the Greens, and many ridings are still being contested because it was so close. So this is the closest possible margin by like raw totals, and in that closest possible margin, there are a bunch of seats that are still up for grabs. So I don't think the election's officially been called yet, right? We still have...
they're still counting, and they say it's going to be called by 28th of October.
There's 49,000 mail-in ballots that still have to be counted. I believe there's still provisional ballots as well, because you could walk into electoral district office for the BC elections and cast a ballot there as well, since it's basically a polling place too. But the vast majority of the 49,000 are mail-ins, and mail-ins by all the polling, which was actually quite accurate in this race, is showing that the Conservatives have a 5 to 11% lead with mail-in votes, and mail-in votes in some of the ridings that are super tight are very heavily going to lead Conservative, because they're very rural ridings, or they have large rural areas, and that's typically where people are going to be mailing in. Because advance voting is great if you live near the advanced voting place, because there usually only is like 1 or 2 per riding, and when your riding is just massive and you live on an acreage, you're probably just going to mail something in. So one of the ridings that's in contention is the southern tip of Vancouver Island, Juan de Fuca Malahat, which is literally within 20 votes. The NDP leads by 20 votes. And with 49,000 mail-in ballots, even if we just evenly divide that around the entire province, that's 526 votes per riding. But I think that this one's probably going to have more than the average, because there are ridings like Vancouver Yaletown that are absolutely tiny. It's like 3 blocks and a lot of apartment buildings is the entire riding. This riding is like massive, like small towns, people who have farms, there are small suburbs, and that's going to have, and there's even a Navy base close by to the riding, and a lot of those sailors end up having their families living in this riding away from the more expensive real estate in Victoria.
So Dan, let's give the basic details. So we have 46 seats for the NDP, 45 seats for the Conservatives as of now. Now, Daniel, what happened with the BC United? What is the story before that? Can you explain that too? Because I
Yeah,
have to.
I'll give.
They put up a lot of independence too, and that is a factor in
Yeah,
some ridings.
exactly. So I'll give the sort of deep history, then I think Wyatt will finish off with because he can give you more on the ground, like what happened this last year. So generally, the BC Conservative. What's so crazy about this election is the BC Conservative wasn't really a party before this. I mean, it was technically on paper, but it wasn't ever a political player in BC. The Liberals had dominated BC, and it had been BC is so far left, right? It's you think West Coast, California, what it is to America. Now think of it a Canadian version of California, and that's British Columbia, right? So you had the Liberal Party sort of being the dominant factor there, where they were kind of seen as more moderate and like pseudo, like if you were
Well, to add one thing to that is so the last time a conservative government was ever elected in British Columbia was 1927. And then the last time a conservative MLA was ever elected was 1972. But because the big force in British Columbia politics, and this also happened in Alberta at one point, was the Social Credit Party, which is an incredibly weird party that basically just turned into a generic conservative party after it had a lot of its dumb economic theories debunked that you can't just fix prices and then just stop like print more money to make people wealthier. That used to be like the Douglasism or whatever that was the economic base of that party. But after that party in British Columbia was super popular from the 40s all the way to the mid 80s, the party collapsed. And because the Conservative Party had been irrelevant since the early 70s, and the only other party that was even slightly somewhat like the Social Credit Party was the BC Liberals, all the old social creditors jumped over to the BC Liberals, and it became kind of like the big tent party for everyone who didn't like the NDP.
Yes, and so the Liberal Party had dominated British Columbia politics. Christy Clark's last one. They had, just been years and years in power, corruption, incompetence, general bureaucracy. People said, "Okay, I'm done with this." So they went to the NDP. Then the NDP were like, "You know what? We need fentanyl. Everyone should be doing fentanyl and chopping their genitals off." So you have kids, they have genitals. We take the genitals away. We replace that with fentanyl. This is how we save the trees, and that's how we fought climate change. And this caused some problems. Because it seems a bit weird. Like, why would you do that? Some people would ask. And so you had the BC Conservative Party sort of ash of the Phoenix, and the BC Liberals became the BC United because they're so unpopular. And they were, as the BC Conservatives were overtaking them, right? They were being snooty and they wouldn't merge with them. And then finally they had to give up. But some BC United people still spitefully ran as independents due to certain internal broigus, which Wyatt can clarify the more important points here.
And so with United too, what actually like kickstarted the BC Conservatives, United had become so liberal because again, the deal in the Gordon Campbell years in the early 2000s were we are more of a soft socially liberal party, but we actually take public finance seriously. Yeah, we're never going to go to a 10% flat tax, but we're the type of government who's going to reduce wasteful spending and be kind of like a soft version of what Ralph Klein and the Alberta Conservative Party was provincially, the PC party, where they were very, very like into cutting taxes, going to flat taxes, cutting wasteful spending, getting back to basics. And the BC Liberals were kind of like that a little bit. But as the federal Liberals started taking over the party as the early 2000s ground on, and then Christy Clark became the premier after Gordon Campbell, the party had basically just said, like, dared conservative voters federally to, go vote for somebody else because you have to vote for us or you're not going to get anything and you're going to have the the BC NDP win. Well, the BC NDP beat Christy Clark and she steps down. And then the BC Liberals cycle through a bunch of uninspiring leaders or a couple of uninspiring leaders. You have Andrew Wilkinson, and then you had Kevin Falcon, who was the last leader. Just corporate liberals, just offering nothing but saying that we're going to take whatever insane garbage the BC NDP are doing and we're going to make it a little bit better, which is not a pitch at all. And at one point, it got so tightly controlled on what you could say and do because I find parties end up falling into these risk managing spirals where let's just manage risk. Let's say nothing that would bother anyone ever. Let's be uncontroversial. And so They ended up kicking out a longtime MLA, John Rusted, who was first elected back in 2005, one of the more conservative members of the BC Liberal Party, out of the caucus for basically just thinking that, not thinking that climate change is the apocalypse. Because he had shared some stuff about how, like, yeah, actually, when there's more CO2 in the atmosphere, trees green more, and it's not really the apocalypse you guys all think it is. And they kicked him out for that. Then he goes over and takes over the BC Conservative Party, which honestly, the people running it before that would just kept the name registered. They ran a few candidates every election, but they only got like 2% of the vote in like the previous provincial election. Rusta joins it, immediately jumps to like 10%. Then you have another MLA leave the BC Liberals, Bruce Banman, over issues around SOGI and all these other things where the BC Liberals are just saying, shut up, sit in the back, don't say
Explain
anything.
SOGI for the uninitiated, please.
This
get to
is
that in a
this is
second.
I already did it. This is the chopping the genitals off the kids. This
Oh,
is the
so
woke-
basically the woke booga booga.
but in the schools.
Effectively, what it is that it's not curriculum. What it is a anti-bullying philosophy. So back when we all went to school, if somebody bullies you or is rude to you, a teacher's gonna be like, "Hey, Brandon, stop that. Get out of the classroom. I'm gonna kick you out and tell you not to do that, and then bring you back in the classroom." Normal stuff you would do at a school. Well,
Mhm.
BC decided, how about we just brainwash kids if anyone tries to bully anybody? And I've talked to so many teachers and they hate this program too. It's like some kid gets made fun of, let's just say, for being Hindu. Okay, let's sit everyone down, put the projector into the room, and let's teach everyone about Hinduism for 5 hours and make everyone resent the kid even harder. That's basically the anti-bullying program. It doesn't work. It's stupid. It's not how kids operate. We can't
Who
turn
brought this program? Rachna
It's like-
Singh, right? That was her name, the education minister.
Yeah. That's what they brought in. And I think it technically was brought in under the BC Liberals, but the gender elements were brought under the NDP. So then we have woke gender theory gets added to SOGI 123, which means, a kid's made fun of, like a boy's made fun of for being a bit more like bit girly in some way. Okay, guys, we're going to sit down and tell you about gender theory for 10 hours. And also, we're not going to tell parents about it because a kid could be bullied by their parents too. And then we're have basically pornography added into the school libraries and nonsense like this. So it's not a piece of curriculum, but it's like technically a toolbox of anti-bullying materials. And you'll get activist teachers who, when any kid mentions anything about gender, makes a joke, I'm attack helicopter gender or whatever. And a woke teacher's like, I get to bring out the SOGI box and I get to just pour out garbage onto these kids about gender theory. And this is what drives up. And this is really the framing of what happened in certain parts of the province in this election. This is what drove up minority parents up the wall, minority voters up the wall. Sikhs,
Can I share the
Hindus,
map, the
Christians,
voting map,
Chinese voters,
Yeah.
they
just to
hated
back
this.
you up?
Yeah.
Just to back you up, let me share the voting map and explain this absolute horror show that everybody does not understand as far as British Columbia is concerned.
I'll say
Really?
the orange are the commies and the greens are the eco commies.
It's what I say is that you have the orange trade unionist socialists, and then you have the farmers market communists as the greens.
I accept.
Yeah. And so this is, if you actually pull back the map a little more, the NDP is quite popular. You don't have to, but I'm just basically saying what's on the fringes. So on the island, the NDP is also very popular because Victoria politics is very much like Vancouver politics, but everything that's orange here is basically just Vancouver and other very Vancouver-like smaller cities like Burnaby. You have New Westminster, Vancouver, Port Moody. They're very granola type NDP areas where people vote for progressive, fashionable things. But even in these areas, it's very tight. It's still extremely tight in a lot of these areas. Richmond mostly went conservative with one riding going NDP simply because one guy who wasn't picked as the conservative candidate. If anything, I say it's maybe an intelligent move, but he ran as an independent just to hurt the conservatives and keep them from winning, maybe so he can be the candidate next time. I don't appreciate it, but I get it from his perspective. But if you go a little bit under the orange area where you can see a little bit of orange, but there's some blue around there, that's Surrey, British Columbia. This is a area of BC, a city that is plurality Indian. A lot of ridings in there are plurality Sikh, Hindu, Muslim. Like 51% of
45
the
to
riding.
50% South Asians.
Yes. And so this is the area where all the polling projections thought solid NDP. And to be fair, it's not their fault for not being able to see what was coming, because South Asians, probably smarter than white people, don't like to take phone calls from pollsters because it's annoying. And so they hate Soji 123. And they showed up in masses to vote against it. And that's considering the Conservatives didn't have a great get out the vote operation. Not their fault. They didn't have much money. It's just that parents hated these programs so much they ran out the door to just like slam ballots in the ballot box. They just like basically like dunked on the ballot box because they hated the NDP Soji program so much, to the point where if you see that little blue piece that's surrounded by the orange at the top, that's Surrey North. That is a riding that the BC education minister held. She got trounced by like 1,500 votes. She lost by
Rachna Singh.
1,500 votes. They thought she was going to win by like 10%. She got destroyed.
Can I share the story of Rachna Singh for those, believe me, for the Indians who must hear Rachna Singh, brown girl, lost. Wait, my dear friends, wait. Rachna Singh is the wife of, what was his name? Gurmeet or Gurnaam, whatever his name was, Singh. He is the person who started the petition that was written to the Member of Parliament from this area, Sukh Dhaliwal, to reopen the Air India bombing investigation for the third time in the Parliament. So, ladies and gentlemen, everybody in India, this is time to party. Rachna Singh lost.
You got a
very good.
Khalistani, one down.
One Khalistani lost. Long live sensible people of that area that smashed that woman who is trying to rub salt on the wounds of innocent Canadians of Indian origin whose families lost their lives. She can go to hell. That family can go to hell. All of them can go to hell. And I say this as a proud Indo-Canadian. Screw them all. So yeah, so I'm sorry I had to share that bit, because when she lost,
I don't know who you're apologizing to, although it's very Canadian, but
Yeah.
you're apologizing to me or Wyatt for screaming at some sort of quasi-Khalistani commie.
yeah, so I guess Wyatt's the nice guy. You're a jackass. So I have one more question over here. So Wyatt and Daniel both, I want your opinion on this. I want both of you to give your opinion. So Daniel, you first. How the hell does this divide exist? That there is a part of liberal Canada and liberal British Columbia that goes all NDP, from what I have understood. And correct me if I'm wrong and if I'm misunderstanding this. But from how things have been explained to me by now, it's quite clear that urban British Columbia has voted for NDP in significantly higher numbers. And that too, I don't know how else to say it, but the Caucasian areas of urban British Columbia. And the moment I go wrong, please correct me.
You're 100% correct. I had somebody post I saw someone post this yesterday, and they had like all these NDP guys like attacking them. They're saying land doesn't vote, because the person showed the election map as it currently stands, and it's like blue everywhere. And then it's like a little bit of orange around the coast and on the island. And they're saying basically the rest of BC wants Vancouver to get a big wake up call. And this person's like, all these people are like, people vote, land doesn't vote. Like, you don't get it though. The thing is that the people voting for the BC NDP, despite the fact that the BC NDP threw out so many accusations of racism at BC Conservative candidates, it's the BC NDP, which are the very white party. It is the white people in urban Vancouver who live in apartment buildings. They don't own property.
You're
They
talking
are
about
not
this, right?
they're not working class. They don't work trade jobs. They all have bachelor degrees, and not obviously not everyone, but I'm talking about the hardcores. They're people who have arts degrees, and I'm saying this as someone with an arts degree, but it's a high concentration of people with arts degrees around that area who have literally nothing in common with the rest of the province. Whereas the BC Conservatives are winning in areas that are more minority based, but there's tons of different people. White people are voting for them. Minority people are voting for them. People who work trades, people who own businesses, people upper income, lower income are voting for the Conservatives in all types of walks of life. Where when you get down to it with the BC NDP, outside of little smatterings of some small rural ridings where it was more so like local conditions determine whether or not people vote NDP or Conservative, like that one area up on the coast, it's more of a First Nation area, and First Nation politics are very different from the rest of the province. It's mostly the same type of voters voting NDP in all these areas. Nervous, middle class, white people who are very concerned about not being seen as progressive or liberal.
But I have a question, Daniel. So, how can this much, and this much screw the life of the whole bit of the map and their children? How dare they?
I mean, the argument we have in Canada is population density determines outcomes, and we have a lot of problems with this in
No,
Canada.
it's the same in India, Daniel. But what the hell?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that I think America does right with sort of
Electoral
the
colleges.
point of the Senate. Like, why does Rhode Island get 2 senators and California only gets 2 senators? It's like, yeah, because when you skew things by in the other ways and sort of voting, like power will naturally drift into these city centers, and then city centers in rural areas have completely different politics and needs and whatever, and you can't have a country that shifted too much to either one. And as Canada's structured right now, there always has been, there's anxiety and let's say discontent in Western Canada, who they feel doesn't get ample political representation federally. And this is sort of a macrocosm and a microcosm of this happens in each province, kind of, where you see again in BC the interior goes blue, and then the coast is orange. That's listen. I this is why I mean I have a whole idea for Senate reform in Canada that would fix this problem federally, but that's the story for another day. It's
And this is where I always disagree with proportional representation advocates wherever they are, just saying, well, you should win the same amount of seats that your party gets in its percentages. And it's like the problem is that just incentivizes you to focus in on one type of voter that you know that you can win in these tight areas and drive all of them out to vote. And it's like you're literally dominating the entire place with a single type of world experience. You know, I mean, obviously, there's different people. There's different types of people who live in urban Vancouver, but you start to get a very tight mix of the types of work areas that they have. They tend to have a lot of the tax dollars concentrated where they live, where they see a lot of tax dollar benefits because the public transportation ends up being put there. It's not being put up in northern BC. It's not being put up along in Vernon or anything like that. Obviously, it isn't. And so the thing is that you end up having people being like, why not vote to take more people's tax dollars and give it to ourselves? Because they actually get the tax dollars. Other people don't get the tax dollars. And so they're living a very small life in terms of compared to people who are, electrical, people who are engineers out in the country, people who live in Abbotsford, people who live in Kelowna, Surrey, who live way up north, who are farmers. The thing is that you can't really stereotype a conservative voter in BC. I can stereotype a BC NDP voter way easier because there is only a certain type of person who votes BC NDP at this point. There's only a couple types.
Now I'm gonna pull up the Vancouver Sun, and can we focus on Surrey? Now this is the one you're talking about, right? This is Rachna Singh's constituency. She got shellacked pretty much
Yeah.
by Mandeep
The
Dhaliwal.
majority of people voted for the conservative in that area.
Yeah, so they really loved her. Then over here, Surrey Guildford, we have Honveer Singh Randhawa winning. Then over here, we have Linda Hepner winning. Now it's quite clear that is Surrey Serpentine River also an area full of, let's say, Indian origin people?
Yeah, I would say so. And who was Hepner's opponent? It was that guy who's like famous for being like the first RCMP officer to wear a turban on duty or whatever. And the problem
Okay.
was that was his only thing. And I think the community was specifically telling him stop. Like, okay, you can't be the guy who keeps playing his one greatest hit over and over again. We're not going to make you the premier one
Yeah.
day because of this one thing you did. Yeah, every once in a while you get that with people that they've done one good thing and they won't stop talking about it. and we're not going to vote for the BC NDP pro Soji agenda because you put a turban on when you were a police officer.
So, Daniel, I have a question for you. And again, I have no other way to ask this. So the one thing the minorities of British Columbia have shown is they'll vote for a white guy. They don't care. They don't care about skin color.
I
The
think
one thing they have shown.
I would skew it even further. I'd say they'd prefer to vote for a white guy over.
Yeah. So can you
especially
talk
at
about
first-
this? Why did we lose these two, Daniel? Why did we the conservatives? We, when I say, because I'm very openly pro-conservatives, if people have any doubt. So why did the conservatives lose Delta North and Surrey Fleetwood and Surrey City Center? Why did they lose and end up losing that?
Well, I think the answer is I think they ran bad candidates, and I think. Listen, so I'll say I think the Khalistani nonsense cost the Conservative Party a lot of this riding.
How?
Because one, you can't be the. I've always said this. Wide agrees. You can't be the party of less terrorism, right? If the Liberals and the NDP are going to be the party that enables terrorism, you're not going to set. You can't sell anyone on we're the party of less terrorism, because if your people are like, oh, less terrorism is good, that's based on the terrorism is bad, then the ample thing is I want no terrorism. So like can't really be this thing. And if you're not going to go like again, all these organizations, Khalistanis and whatever, like you're never going to be more you're never going to be like the Khalistanis are never going to flip the switch and be like, okay, pull the plug on the Liberal and the NDP. I know Jagmeet's one of us, but you know, Pierre is now he's sharing an ice cream sundae with Tim Uppel. So like go. Like that's not going to happen. And you're not going to drive people in. Like if you're actually anti-Khalistani and you push them out, you'll actually get the vote, a motivated vote of the Sikh and Hindu community who don't want you. Or again, this is why I say it might be better to have a white guy, because if you have someone who has fluent and like eloquent English skills, that's really good in English speaking countries. I know that's crazy to say.
Here's something too, and this is the problem, is that a lot of Khalistani guys are very active in politics. That's all they do. They work, they go to temple, and they do politics. And so because when parties are small, especially, they are very susceptible to everyone's very susceptible to flattery when you're a small party and people coming and saying, oh, I want to help you so much. And a lot of these guys swing by and they want to be candidates. And you're like, oh, nobody wants to be a candidate for us in that area. Oh, sure. And you end up getting some real turkeys of these candidates, and they're not trying to work hard. They're really not. They tend to also have massive egos. If you ever talk to Khalistanis, they think they're the biggest thing ever. And so there was even a Khalistani, like an openly Khalistani candidate who was running for the Conservatives, who ended up getting kicked out because of how ridiculous it was. Dupinder in one of these ridings, who
did she blame?
Yeah, was it you?
Yeah, she blamed me. But she didn't have the balls to tag me in the tweet. She said, she also said, and Daniel Boardman retweeted this, and it was very unfair. She's an old associate of Jagmeet.
Still couldn't say whether or not she was a thumbs up or thumbs down on Parmar, but that's neither here nor there now. But the problem in some of these ridings too is because some of these guys are so active in politics, I'll talk about candidate quality. This doesn't even exactly go to Khalistani stuff. But even just with candidate quality, the problem too is some people will assume that the heart of these communities are at the temple. And a lot of the times they're not. And the problem is when you run somebody who doesn't speak amazing English, is that it actually insults people from the community. They're thinking, do you think I can't speak English? Because what I talked to some people in the party, and they said, what frustrates people and what we're going to do better next time, and this is one, to be clear, a mistake every single party in Canada makes, is that you got to go meet with the guys in the family who run the family business. If you want to actually know what the family's thinking about and what they want to do, you don't go down to the temple and talk to people at the temple. You don't want to do that with a church either. You would go and talk to heads of households. You would go and door knock them and talk to them. You can't just swing by the temple and talk to them. Frankly, and I've heard this in BC, a lot of temples, a lot of normal people just stop going because it's only the fundamentalists who show up after a while. So I'm done. And they go home. And then these guys you end up running a candidate who hangs out at the temple, who's saying that I'm very interested to run, and they have bad English, frankly. They go around, and these guys who can speak fluent Punjabi, but they speak good English too, he goes to their door and he's like, why is this guy at my door who can't speak English? I want a legislature who can actually take on a cabinet role if he gets in. And why aren't you coming to my, why aren't you coming to my sawmill? Why aren't you coming to my farm and talking to me? I'm the one who actually runs the family wallet here, but you're talking to my uncle down at the temple who doesn't do anything, who only showed up here 5 years ago? That's what actually ticks people off, because South Asian voters are like any voters. You actually have to talk to them like voters. You have to stop acting like they are a group of people to be corralled. Yes, that might happen in nomination races, but when you're actually in a general election, the Turkey Khalistani candidates get like 200-300 votes when they try and run as independents because people don't like them.
And yeah, this is another example of like the
I'm
problem
gonna go
with.
quickly grab a sign. I'll be back, but keep talking, guys.
Okay, yeah, I'll get that. This is the problem that we brought up of like running bad candidates. You can shove people in the nomination race ridings because like think of how involved people are in local politics or like. I mean, everyone talks about Trump versus Kamala, the big U.S. election. Yeah, people talk about a federal election. Provincial elections are smaller. Municipal elections are smaller. Who's voting for city council members? Like, it's all there. So when you can cheat on ridings and you end up installing candidates, well, when you get to the big leagues, like when the elections are real, right? So Canada's still a real country and has real elections when the Conservatives and the Liberals and the NDP and the eco-communists, they're all running against each other because they all have vested interest. Like that's real. That's voting. So in order to win there, you need good candidates. You need candidates like a door knock. You need candidates that can do an interview and come off as, reasonable and sensible and get to people. That, the fact that we have people, with poor English skills, and it's not just the Khalistanis, you do this in Pakistani ridings too. There's some people in Toronto. I remember there's some guys I was complaining about back in the day, and I knew one of them couldn't speak English. So I invited him on my show to talk about it in English, whatever he wanted about. Just the condition was that it had to be in English. But they just had this candidate running who, and it's annoying. Like, and it's like this patronizing thing of, yeah, they think that whatever ethnic group will just be like, oh, that person looks like me, so I'm voting there, and then screw everyone else.
Happen all the time over tons of meetings, and it was a lot of meetings where we were at actually somebody's farm. Blueberry farming is big in the Fraser Valley, and you'd be talking to these guys who had been in Canada for like 25 years, turban, big beard, and they're saying, please stop the immigration. Even though it's provincial, they're like, stop having benefits for people if they move to British Columbia. Stop having these extra temporary foreign worker benefits here. I don't know these people. Just because they look like me doesn't mean I want them here. They're not part of my family. Honestly, when I was running for my nomination in Signal Hill, my voter who was the most anti-immigration when you talk to them was what I would start labeling as Indian no accent. Somebody who was Indian but obviously grew up here, was not from India. They hate immigration, and they hate people looking at them and saying, you must be in favor of mass immigration. They're like, one, I can do math and know we don't have enough houses for these people, and sorry, screw you, I'm not just in favor of someone because they look like me. It would be like if we just have tons of Romanian people being dumped off into Canada, millions a year, and they can't speak English, and they're only working minimum wage jobs, and you're like, but you like them, you're white. I'm like, no, what the heck is this?
So I have one more question here that, you said if they would have selected the right candidates, they would have won. But Daniel, you tweeted something, I think it was today that I saw.
Before we get to that, I just want to get to the stupid sign I have. This was an actual candidate that was running for like the Freedom Party here. I'm just doing this to spite him at this point. But the leader of this party complained at me over email because I made fun of his party for obviously being one of these kind of like protester party grift things, which it obviously is. This is one of those things where they only ran 5 candidates in Surrey and then tried to like raise money for these people, even though like I couldn't. He also accused me, I think, of like, or people accused me of stealing the sign. This like sign was like squashed up on the side of the road. But this is like classic. This is like a classic Kevin J. Johnston, Chris Sky type thing to do. You know what I mean? Start up a party that has really all this color on the signs that's not meant to win. And they were trying to actually stop people from voting for the Conservatives because we're the real anti-Soji party.
That's correct.
I had to get that jab in there. It's like an Artur Pawlowski thing to do if everyone.
So how many seats did the BC independence, the conservative independence fighting cost the new conservative party that fought?
Probably 5, and that's where we should have blown it out. We lost it in Ladysmith, Oceanside Ladysmith, in Richmond. What was it? Stevenson, uh, Lumby, in Lumby, Vernon Lumby, and I believe there's a couple others I can't think of off the top of my head. And I'm talking about like serious independence, not like technically if we put all these fringe parties together, we could have won. I'm talking about like this guy got 25% of the vote as an independent and was obviously, if he wasn't in the race, they would have voted conservative, but they went around saying, I'm the real alternative to stop the BC NDP. And it was like a spite run.
Yeah. So I have another question here. And I say this as someone who cares for Canada. Before somebody says, Daniel shared this tweet. I'm going to share the tweet image first, and then I'll let Daniel explain. This is apparently a deleted tweet which says elected officials and candidates don't always know who they are getting a picture with. But how does Jaspal Atwal, a man convicted of attempted murder for his role in an attack on an Indian politician, sit next to the Surrey mayor and two BC conservative candidates nearby? And now I hand it over to you, my dear friend Daniel Boardman.
Well, yeah, I mean, we saw Jasper Atwal, and I saw Jasper Atwal in like campaign ads and not campaign ads. So like he was just there like nominating different. I saw candidates releasing videos of like, look, here I am with the community. One of the pictures like, is that Jasper Atwal? And it is. And this is the problem: the fact that Jasper Atwal is running around BC and is still a political figure. Like this guy caused a diplomatic issue in India because he's a convicted terrorist.
So can I say what he was there? He was convicted for an attempt to assassinate the Punjab minister Malket Singh Sidhu. He was a Khalistani sympathizer and a member of the now banned militant group International Sikh Youth Federation. And listen, and I'm reading of Wikipedia, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. I'm reading Wikipedia right now. And he was involved in the 1985 attack of Ujjal Dosanjh, a strong opposer of the Khalistani movement, who would later become the 33rd Premier of British Columbia. Daniel, it was very important to explain all this. I am sorry.
Oh yeah, I mean, so he's a problem. Jasper Atwal is someone that should not be sitting next. I mean, he's sitting right next to the Surrey mayor. So it's not like he's one of the guys on the fringes and it was just a room. Like, listen, if you're a politician, you go into a room full of people and, okay, there's, 57 people here and they're all whatever. And then one of the guys on the side, okay, turns out he was some convicted fraudster. Like, okay, we get that. But the fact that Jasper Atwal is sitting down right beside her, and Jasper Atwal, apparently, am I wrong, is a community figure still in Surrey and
Isn't he a relative of one of the members who won? I'm not saying that member who won is a Khalistani, but what is his? In Punjabi, you would say Bhangu.
I was going to say that, and the thing that ends up happening with a lot of this stuff, and this is why, because the thing is that someone like Jaspal Atwal will show up to every party's type of events if he knows at least a singular person there, or is just trying to be friendly. So this isn't, I wouldn't say, on the same level of like Justin Trudeau inviting him along on a diplomatic trip to India, where every single person knew better to do that. They were doing it to basically gain favor of the community. But what has to happen is that people have to stop letting community rumors of, well, maybe it was Ujjal who attacked him first. Stuff like this that I hear in the backgrounds and whatnot, or well, he didn't actually. And the thing is, there's too much nonsense where people have to start to just say, okay, who cares if there's certain people in the community who are willing to hear his lies? Let's start just saying at the door, you got to go. Even if it ticks people off a little bit and saying, oh, why do you have a problem with him? Because there is going to be a legitimate portion of the community who is going to believe his rumors about why he's actually a super nice guy. But there has to be the red line on the floor saying you're not allowed in anymore because you got to go Pakistan and do something else. You're only here to try and project power, and the community, we don't care.
Well, I'm even harder on this. It's not the community rumors. The community, screw them. This is rostered. This is party leaders and conservatives. Where you have to say no convicted terrorists. Like you have to be
Even
the
over
party.
here, journalist V has tweeted, Daniel, I'm just backing you up. Sorry. BC conservative candidate poses with Jaspal Atwal, a convicted Khalistani terrorist. Trudeau caused a major embarrassment for Canada by taking Atwal as a part of his delegation. So there's more pictures here. So why are the conservatives doing this? I find, can I just say, as someone, Ujjal Dosanjh is someone I look up to as a proud member of the Indo-Canadian community now. He's a hero of Canada. He's a hero. He loves this country. And shame on the Conservative Party for letting Jaspal Atwal and such characters who attacked Ujjal Dosanjh. I find it very offensive as a person of Indian origin. I don't care about what others think. I find it deeply offensive that this man is being encouraged. I mean,
it's
what
bad
else
from
does he have?
I think now that especially now that the Conservatives have a solid base of support, they can win ridings. We're no longer in election crunch time where you can say, okay, I'm not going to start a fist fight with a guy at an event by trying to kick him out and it becomes a news story or whatever. At this point, yeah, there is no excuses. You can't have these people showing up anymore and saying, well, we don't want to rustle anyone's feathers. We're no longer in an election period where you can actually start to set the tone of you're no longer allowed in. We're no longer visiting your area.
I'm going to push back on this because this goes to your original. But I know you don't believe this. I know you're making good points, and I agree with you saying. But this is what you said originally that I agree with you so much. It's risk management. It's just this pure risk management.
And I don't. Yeah, and that's where
of coming in. Whereas I'm saying, actually, you would have done better as a party had 3 months ago you said no, and you come out and publicly said, and Ross Sturt had said, Jaspal Atwal's not allowed near this case because he's a Khalistani extremist who murdered Canadians, and we're a party of rule of law and anti-terrorism and no to extremism. Then you're the party that's against extremism. Because when you're the less Khalistani party, you win no one over.
And this is one of those things I think that happens with a lot of ethnic community issues is that the differences in people's knowledge on the issues goes from 0 to 100. Sometimes you're in the community or you're in the know like you two are, and you know the issue 100% pretty much. You know who's the type of person who shouldn't be here. You know who should be here. Whereas when you have, I would say, a Rusted who doesn't know these people, and you have a lot of these types of Khalistani people who are going to be trying to offer you advice and say, no, actually, you shouldn't be doing that, or you're going to tick off a lot of people, and you're in the middle of an election. You're like, I don't know what to do, but I think that means that there can't be any excuses.
Isn't this guy also related to Jaspal Atwal? I don't know. I'm asking.
I don't know exactly.
So somebody this is the other guy in the picture with Jaspal Atwal.
We one of them. The other one's Brent Chapman.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I find it very offensive that, I mean, I don't know if this person is related to Jaspal Atwal or not. I've heard this. I don't know. I'm not saying he's a Khalistani. He could not be a Khalistani. He must be opposed to Khalistanis or whatever. But my point is, Jaspal Atwal has attacked an Indian politician and a Canadian politician and has been convicted. And after that, if he's doing rounds, I mean,
he's both a domestic terror threat and a foreign liability. Like this can't stand. All to the
It's kind of like the equivalent. It's kind of the equivalent of like old IRA terrorists being able to still kind of walk around the circles of Sinn Féin and whatnot in places like Northern Ireland, where people are like, "Well, that was the past," and it's like that was the past. But the problem is these people have never actually, like, had their moment where they said, I was wrong, I did terrible things, stop doing this stuff, this movement's toxic, because they still play into the toxic movement.
And I'm going to go back to the Khalistani that was kicked out, one of Jagmeet's old homies who was running for the Conservative Party. And I had quote tweeted someone else doing a threat on her and Pamar, and I said, hey, look at this, what the hell is this going on? And then she was kicked out, and then she threw a temper tantrum. She accused everyone of this, and that, and said she was going to run independently. Who won that riding?
The white guy did, right?
The Conservative Party. Yeah. They replaced her with someone who wasn't a Khalistani.
I actually forget which riding was that. Which one was it?
I can't remember.
Was that the one I just held up the sign for, the panorama?
I don't know. Listen, I'm in Ontario. I know it was a Surrey something.
I actually forget who replaced her.
Yeah. But the person who replaced her, I know the person who replaced her won. And like, that's my point. It's like, when we attack the Conservative Party for different things, it's not because like, oh, we're traitors and you got to like rally around the flag and like we're on the blue team and it's all about fighting the liberals. It's like, if you have a weak, feckless, useless Conservative Party that can't distinguish itself from the liberals, you're not going to win, and we're not going to have long-term success. Like, I think it's kind of been proven, like what I've been saying about minorities has been proven right in the BC election, which is they're not all terrorists, and you'll actually win more of them over.
Here's actually something interesting too.
And cut the terrorism.
Here's actually something interesting too on that comment the media kept hammering Brent Chapman for. He made a comment that, ill-advised about Palestinians 10 years ago on Facebook in a Facebook group in a comment. It's silly to even bring this up 10 years later. Someone said something out of frustration. Notice how that didn't affect Surrey at all. And it's because people don't care. People don't give a crap about what you said 10 years ago. They care about what you're doing for them now. And the thing is that it's kind of one of those actions speak louder than words thing. And also, a lot of these communities, they also get accused all of the time of being like Islamophobic or whatever. So they're tired of it. A lot of the South Asian community doesn't tend to like other communities saying you're phobic, because that doesn't really do well in minority communities because they know that you're not.
Yeah,
turns out minority people aren't woke progressives.
Yeah, eventually
No, they're
there's gonna
not.
be a reckoning.
How many times have I said this to you
people.
guys? Minority communities. How many times have I told you guys? Minority communities are for family values, education. They believe in actually hard work. They are the ones who actually. You know why the Hindu community of Canada got screwed over? People don't want to accept this because they were the most fierce individualists in your entire political spectrum. They were individualists to the core, and they paid the biggest price for this over here. It's a fact. I'm stating this as someone who's connected to the current community far more now.
Yeah, it's the Hindu community. People have to realize, like, they vote, like, they are the demographic. They're high vote turnout, but they don't do vote bank politics. So you can't really get them by having a Hindu dance around and doing the things. Now it's like there is a Chanjaria thing where there's such a vacuum, and now that you have Palestinians running around threatening to kill them, like having someone to speak up, there's that value to that. But generally, this community is and they're the strongest supporters of the Conservative Party right now. And again, they'll vote
evangelicals are a little bit. They're close.
Yes. Who are what sector?
No, it's Hindu. It's evangelicals, and then Hindus a little bit behind. Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty telling that they vote more conservative than Catholics do.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, you have a potential voting bloc in the Conservative Party like the evangelicals. That's pretty crazy. Okay. That's and the fact that no one's really.
The only rub here is that more Hindu Canadians, they're more likely to still be permanent residents than Sikh Canadians. So I think that's where, frankly, cynical people in the background are willing to, and again, I'm even about to say something, and it's not even right, because the thing is that they play to Khalistani elements, but the Sikh community doesn't like them. But they think it's like a lot of illogical things stacking on top of each other. That, well, there's not as many Hindu voters, so we can play to these Khalistani guys, even though the Sikh community doesn't like the Khalistani guys. So you're justifying playing to this fringe group because this other group doesn't have as many actual citizen voters in it, even though that doesn't matter because both Sikhs and Hindus are equally against Khalistanis.
It's a tragedy because coming up in the next federal election, I can assure you that the Hindu vote bank is going to be activated in a big way. There are initiatives that are in the making to actually have a targeted approach now to the Hindu community. And I'm going to support it wholeheartedly. We're in the process and I will share it eventually. And believe me, the Hindus are this close to even dumping the conservatives mentally.
Can I say one of the dumbest stories that we've seen in the past few months was the story that like Pure Polyev is an agent of Modi or whatever that's going on right now?
Let's talk about that. I
want to talk about that because it's the dumbest thing on the planet. Is there some evidence that India might have messed around because they don't like Patrick Brown? Sure. Also, the idea that Pierre Poilievre was not going to win the 2022 conservative leadership race, even if he didn't host a single event and he just posted a single Facebook post saying, I'm running for leadership, buy a membership and vote for me, he would have won anyways. So, if anything, I think this is actually a great piece of evidence going to the ongoing issues between Trudeau and India of proving that the Indian government's probably not running a giant criminal organization around Canada, considering that apparently some Indian bureaucrats might have been stupid enough to think that Patrick Brown could be the Conservative Party leader.
Yeah, it goes to everything I said. Like, listen, my defense of India and my defense of Canada is so I haven't said that actually. It's now. So my defense of India is I think they're all idiots. I think they're all idiots. I think they're bureaucrats. I think they're incompetent. And if anyone actually thought that if anyone thought Patrick Brown had any chance of winning that conservative leadership race, they're an idiot, right? It was Pierre Poilievre or maybe Pierre Poilievre, and that was in like a field of like 10 different people. Pierre was going to win.
All the second place votes for Pierre Poilievre. Even if you say it came close, it was going to be Pierre Poilievre.
He didn't even get to second place votes. It was just over. TKO first round. Like it.
I think it was literally like 75% of the vote was him.
There's the other thing though, where Patrick Brown was actually the foreign interference candidate. If you look at Patrick Brown's average donation, it was right at the maximum. And this is what we were on Burka together where I explained this and like the levels of infiltrating.
Right?
That
sounded so nasty. We were on the Mojo story.
We're on the Mojo story. We're on the Mojo story.
The funny thing, and maybe it's true that there were some like government involved agents who want Patrick Brown to lose and they start messing around behind the scenes. I don't know. Even if that's true, that's the funniest story ever. So we have Patrick Brown involved in foreign interference, trying to become the Conservative Party leader, and we have some foreign interference people who are trying to stop him. So I'm pretty sure that's called
like
neutral.
India and Pakistan are fighting in our electoral things. But Patrick Brown wasn't going to win. Like his average donation was right at the maximum, which is wild. Because it was such an obvious like AstroTurf BS campaign. No one likes Patrick Brown in the Conservative Party because he lied to the Conservative voters on Ontario saying he's conservative, then went hard left and then was really nasty about it. So he couldn't pull the same shtick twice, but I guess he just wanted to farm engagement.
He ran as like the anti-COVID candidate because he technically was like having these small tiffs with Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau that I'm now suddenly against the lockdowns or whatever. Like Patrick Brown.
I'll bring it around.
That was it.
So this shows how stupid some people in the Indian bureaucracy are and how disconnected they are from other parts of the Indian bureaucracy if they did anything about Patrick Brown, or how crazy the thing is. But India's now come out, and this is where I'm like, I think India kind of screwed itself or made itself look silly, is the High Commission's interview with CTV, where he goes and he's acting like he's in a meme war with the Canadian government. He goes, "Oh, I'm not going to release. Oh, it's only intel. I don't have any hard evidence, but Khalistanis are deep state assets of CSIS." And this is where I go, no one hates the Khalistanis more than me. No white guy here outside of Terry Molesky probably knows more about the Khalistanis than I do. I have my criticisms of the Canadian institutions. You can't convince me that the Khalistanis are deep state assets of CSIS. Okay, we are not. This is much more likely incompetence, stupidity, laziness, and just utter moral cowardice than it is intentionality of CSIS. Because if CSIS was behind this, if CSIS was behind the Khalistani movement in Canada and was giving them martial support, supported by the Prime Minister's office, they would be nowhere near as successful as they are in this country right now. But by the bureaucracy and the decision making, and this is clearly such a natural cause. This is not a plan to undermine India in any great way. This is us aiming a bazooka at our own foot and pretending we're Sun Tzu. Okay. Speaking of Sun Tzu, the Prime Minister of Canada, did you know? Have I told you this Justin Trudeau quote? The Sun Tzu Trudeau, actual Justin Trudeau quote: "If you kill your enemies, they win." Could it
Wasn't that about ISIS or whatever? Didn't he say that about ISIS?
Yeah, it was in 2015. It was in 2015 about ISIS.
I think it was justifying pulling out the F-16s.
Again, could it not just be that these people are incompetent? Yeah. And they're being taken advantage of by money flowing in from the CCP, the ISI, and these actual lunatics.
What's our actual current evidence on the Najjar killing thing? Isn't it basically just that like an Indian diplomat sent a mean text saying I'd like to see this guy die or something like that?
Well, the evidence we have is the Americans releasing evidence that the RAW agent who contacted someone to assassinate Panun in
He was
America.
bragging about Niger.
He was
He was
bragging about.
bragging about not that I got Niger. He was like, I will get all of them. But the point is, there is no evidence. People brag all the time. Because I've read the indictment. I don't know. I have better things to do in life. I guess I don't. I mean, I read these things.
And the thing is, and that's why the Americans got so like, ugh, as soon as Justin Trudeau came out, because they know that we have little pieces of facts that might say that he might have something to do with it. But like, you'll wait until you got a case. Like any prosecutor, you basically have every piece of the case already together, and
you
all
know how
really
full
need
of shit
is
the
witnesses
Canadians
to
are.
show how bad they are on the stand, and that's it. You bring everything. You have like file cabinets full of stuff. We have like a text log from a guy who's probably probably a congenial liar.
So I want to explain this first of all, why this entire CSIS angle, or most of the things that I hear from the Canadian side, are so disgusting. And I say this with full responsibility. Listen, I'm someone who doesn't care. Whatever India and Canada sort their shit out, I am I'm not a prime minister of India that I'm gonna fucking sit here and answer for what the Indians do. First of all, I'm not the Indian prime minister, nor am I an Indian bureaucrat, but I do have a functioning brain, unlike others. You know what the Canadians are doing right now? I mean, nobody can take.
Off and trying to give them fentanyl. Is that our solution to India?
Did you read this? This man, right, was killed in Northwest Winnipeg. He had a long feudal rival thing, right? They call him a Sikh leader now. And you know what? Once he was bumped off, his rival gang actually took credit for the murder also. The Canadians want me to believe the Indians have a transnational gang bumping off system running. Do you know how incompetent Indian bureaucrats are? I'm a freaking Indian. 6 months of the year I live in India.
Here's the thing too. Also, if you were trying to avoid scrutiny, why would you keep filing extradition orders against the guy who turns up dead? You would say nothing.
Yeah.
He would die, and you're like, oh, what's that all about? You wouldn't constantly say, I'm interested in having this guy prosecuted in my country, and then be like, oh, this is taking too long. Shoot him. Like, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do, like, obviously, it would be wrong if you did that. But I'm saying that nobody would do that because it's obviously they kept hitting the extradition orders like it might work someday. And also, another thing is bureaucrats are lazy. The thing is that they can just send out another extradition request with an angry email and, hey guys, let's go out and get mimosas now. Like, the thing is, like, that's a day if you're a bureaucrat. What are you going to start trying to set up like your own mafia and call people up and send agents around? You're sleeping at Motel 8s and you're having like terror.
There's no mafia, Don. I fear less than one run by Indian bureaucrats.
And listen, you know how the Canadians had nothing? Before the Singapore meeting they had with Ajit Doval, the National Security Advisor of India, the Canadians had leaked to Washington Post. It's very clear right now that the Canadians, before they went into a meeting with Ajit Doval, where Ajit Doval wasted 5 hours of his life, and he's like, this is what you guys call evidence? They leaked it to the Washington Post, and very, right, the Global Mail exposed the two leaders who leaked it to the Washington Post. That's not foreign interference, by the way, an American newspaper doing these things.
By the way, if you were a gang in Canada and you whacked a guy and you're working for the Indian government, you think your first move, because nobody knows you did it, would be to jump on a plane and go to India, where you're presumably going to be protected. No, because they wouldn't. Here. Because they would get arrested there and they get tried there for stuff. Because they're probably...
Yeah, and listen, it's any way you slice it, there's either lying or comments going on. That's the perfect thing. It's like, yeah, you brought these gangsters in, they did the hit, and they've been in Canada for
just hanging out
a year after they just killed him. And like, again, if they were Indian agents, it's sneaking into Canada is easy. Sneaking out of Canada, that's nothing. You do the hit, you go out, you go back into the Punjab,
Yeah.
you're in Haryana, slipping mimosas. Maybe you end up spending a year or so or two in Sri Lanka. Who knows? I'm just picking random countries in the area. It could be Bhutan. Like, well, we'll just make up. You know
You
what I
can go
mean?
to
Like,
Nepal. Indians don't need a visa to go to Nepal. You can just waltz into
go to
Nepal. In
Nepal.
fact,
Okay, there. Go to Nepal. Just walk into Nepal. Go
yeah.
back. Walk into Nepal. Spend a few. Here's
Do you know
half a
Nepal
million
is one of
dollars
the
in
routes that the
cash.
Khalistanis use even after their OCIs are cancelled? They try to come to India through Nepal. How do I know? I know because I spoke to agents over here, travel agents who told me innocently. They asked me this question. I even mentioned this in a mainstream media thing, where with one of those rare occasions where I said yes to go to mainstream media in India, where I met these random travel agents who came and say, why are certain Sikh people taking tickets to Nepal now? Why don't they go straight to Punjab? I was like, did you ever ask the question that they don't have an OCI for India? And the one way to sneak into India is Nepal. So they're trying to do the Nepal route. But just think about this, okay? For the last 5 years, India has been sending extradition requests for Lawrence Bishnoi. The one person, the RCMP, the one person, the RCMP
Mhm.
said is involved in this entire thing. So the Indians ask for extraditions of RCMP while they use RCMP. The Canadians don't provide any evidence. The Indian ambassador's interview is strategically leaked, stopped, and then leaked and released after a while. Then the Canadian broadcaster CTV geo blocks the site so that Indians cannot go and read and break it down because see nobody beats the Indian on the internet. There's just too many of us, and we are so good at that game. Best of luck messing with us on the internet. We will
Yeah.
destroy those
And
people.
like, how much of a let's say that he was working, Lawrence Bishnoi was working for them. What an epic bluff it would be to send in multiple extradition orders, knowing that if they actually said, "Oh, fair enough, send them back." Damn it! Like, damn it, he actually sent them back. We were doing this for cover. Like,
It's so yeah. It's like and it's so clear that the Liberals are using this for domestic political gains. And listen, I would be willing. I would not be shocked if it comes out that it's some way the Indian government has tried to tip their finger on some of these Khalistani gang wars to have them knock each other off because they're they're trying to balkanize India and they're a strategic threat to India. And like, yeah, I think Panuin's a terrorist. Like he's clearly engaged in terrorist activity right now. He's making threats against Air India liners and like he's encouraging widespread low-level terrorism of false bomb reporting. We don't know if he has an actual attack plan. Like this is problematic. I'd be willing to believe that maybe someone in the Indian bureaucracy tipped their finger into the gang war here and there. Like I'm willing to believe that it's like the kernel of nugget that they're using to expand it out. But you can't tell me that, oh, okay, the Indian government actually has a sophisticated system where like they're coming in and pulling assassins. But like if they had a sophisticated gang system, they would come in, they would make the hit, they would get out of the country, and they would cycle new guys in. So they could
you
like
wouldn't hire some morons who are overstaying a student visa and involved in other gang activities that if they get
yeah.
picked up by the police, they'll just
No,
tell them everything.
and not just that. As far as the
And
CSIS
also, have
angle
we
is
not?
concerned,
Also, the guys who killed Najjar, they've been arrested, a bunch of them. How has nobody blabbed to the point where it's been leaked that
no,
these guys
no,
said,
they don't. They could not even explain the motive in the courts. They just pled guilty. The two people who were caught. See, this is what I keep trying to say. Here's Lawrence Bishnoi in a jail in Gujarat, running a transnational gang operation. At least 14 people of that gang, where Goldie Brar is also allegedly either in Canada or in America, we don't know. There was just an audio of one of them being released a few days ago where he was claiming of going after another person, by the way, in Punjabi, that I heard. And they want us to believe that we, the Indian government, is hiring the same person whose gang members we want extradited, right? Try and understand this. This is how stupid they are. And then CSIS has this to say about what is the interest of the Indian government. Listen to this. So India, even worst case scenario, what is India interested in?
It is also important to understand that why India has an interest when it comes to Canada. So Canada has close to 2% of its population coming from India, and almost half of it are Sikh. And this is the largest Sikh diaspora outside of India. And that attracts a lot of India's attention. And we have also, history, what happened with Air India. So that also tanked a little bit the interest that India has in Canada. The objective of India, I'm not sure, and feel free to, not sure that they really want to influence our policy. I think that they really want to influence the pro-Palestinian debate and conversation.
Try and understand. This is the representative of your intelligence. This is Canada's National Security Advisor, Nathalie Droon. Guess who was leaked? Whose name was leaked in the Globe and Mail? She is one of them. This is the woman who leaked to Washington Post. This is the woman in an hearing where she cannot lie, where she's going to be held accountable for the things she says, goes and says, nah, Indians are only interested in the Khalistani bit, nothing else.
That was a great thing from that RCMP press conference where these morons think that when they ask the RCMP, so you think these are anti-Sikh attacks? Like, don't ask. Just infer it in your reports afterwards. Like, I'm trying to tell people how to do better propaganda. Never ask somebody who's not going to lie your obvious question based on a false premise. He's like, are these anti-Sikh attacks? They're like, no, they're going after crazy people who like are in favor of blowing up things. And you're like, oh.
Yeah. So let's say worst case scenario, the Indians did it. Worst case scenario. Worst. Do I think the Indians did it? Hell no. I don't think so. And the reason for that is I know my government. Incompetent morons, they'll do it over here? Go to hell. I mean, why do you remember the first time we spoke on the phone?
Yeah.
These were the exact words I had used.
Yeah.
You remember? This
Yes,
was when I called Wyatt and I were on the phone call and he said, do you think the Indians would do something? I was like, the reason I'm not betting on them doing it is because they're so incapable and they're so incompetent. Wyatt, I know stories.
The other thing that you said were the only people that might be dumber than them are the actual Khalistani gangs who end up accusing each other of being Indian agents and then killing each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the most likely thing what has happened over here. First of all, people, and don't ask me for evidence. I'm never going to share it. But I know cases over here of people who do shady things at times, like financial frauds, and they get their Indian passport made overnight over here through our people. Lower down, I'm not talking about higher up, lower down, they get those passports done and they run away from here by bribing. I've heard cases like that. Do I have evidence? I don't have evidence, but I've heard stories like this. You're telling me these people who are on sale for $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 are carrying out a transnational repression network? I mean, give me a freaking break. Point number 2, you can't call for the extradition of the same people you're using. It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Unless it's like the most insane triple bluff.
And thirdly, this lady who I played was the same lady who leaked to the Washington Post. And look at the difference. The Americans say something, the Indians take it seriously because the Americans actually share evidence. They say, listen, this has happened, we have it here. The Canadians have nothing. All the Canadians are doing is they actually needed a deflection from the real problem. And now this is the perfect segue, right, to the greatest prime minister in the history of the human race, the great Justin Trudeau. And let me tell you why these things have happened. I think around 3-4 years ago, or maybe maximum 5, when Captain Amrinder Singh was the chief minister of Punjab in India, he actually made a request. So there was this blacklist that India had, and it had multiple people on that blacklist who can never enter India. Lo and behold, many of them tended to be Khalistanis. So Captain Amrinder Singh said, look, a lot of those people have had a change of heart. And Captain Amrinder Singh has a very good personal relationship with Narendra Modi, even when Amrinder Singh was a member of the Congress and the chief minister from the Congress party in Punjab, while Modi is in BJP. He convinced Modi to remove the blacklist. I think Captain Amrinder Singh basically signed the death warrant of every single person who was on that blacklist, because these people were active Khalistanis, and now the ISI and all those others must be thinking, oh, he's out of the blacklist. Has he turned? Is he going to give us away? And they start bumping them off. Has anybody given that thought? Has anybody with an ounce of intelligence who follows Punjab politics and Indian politics just thought a basic question that Pakistanis run Khalistan? And when Indians say, okay, you can come, and then they write a letter, because that must be one of the conditions, right? The Indians must have said, no, at least you have to thank the Indian government for removing your name from the blacklist. And they wrote the letter and they got bumped off. Ask yourself this question. Isn't this a plausible scenario? And Wyatt, this is exactly what I had explained to you when we spoke on the phone.
Yeah. Listen, like, this is the other thing, is like, how, okay, so the Colonel truth, maybe India stuck its finger in the gang war, but it's very different than like giving out a direct kill order. That doesn't look like it is. I mean, could the Indians just have done something clever, like, hey, put out some diplomatic cables in Pakistan, or had the Pakistanis find that, oh, Hardip Singh Nijjar, he's now on our side, he's flipped, right? If you release intelligence somewhere and the Pakistanis pick up the Pakistani agents somewhere in, Sweden, let's say, pick up intelligence that one of the Khalistanis here in Canada is now working with India, and that's false intelligence, and they bump him off. Like, that could be a reason the Indians could say, yeah, that was successful, we did it. But also, an illegal thing, did they do it? Or
to trivialize this a little bit more, this also could be because these guys tend to make themselves big community figures in a certain fringe of the community. This could be like a Biggie and Tupac scenario, where somebody else who wants to be big in the community gets someone to shoot him.
Yeah,
it could be
exactly
like
the
president, or not even be the president. You get to be a power player if he's gone. Considering a lot of these guys aren't exactly very scrupulous in the way that they do business and like the type of money.
It's almost like there was no real reason to start an international incident over a dead Khalistani gangster terrorist.
And there's been people far worse than him, and how, in terms of like people who were obviously involved in Air India, nobody's gotten after them. They've been dying more of old age than anything. And somehow nobody's going to go after them, even though they have more influence. They went after this like dorm room joker. Like, it just doesn't add up. If it came out one day and they did it, we'd just be here basically calling them morons for doing it, because it's such a stupid crime. It's a stupid crime to do.
Yeah, that's the thing. And for the record, Abhijit Iyer Mitra is in the live stream hurling abuses at me, which I don't endorse. Abhijit, shame on you. Please behave yourself in the live stream. And let's read this letter now. So this letter was leaked. Daniel, what the hell is this? First of all, ladies and gentlemen, Sachit Mehra, the president of the Liberal Party of Canada, has nothing to do with Kushalmehra. We are not related. I just wanted to say that on record.
I want to say that I am related to this this Mehra.
I remember Bratney going, "This is Indian interference."
Yeah. Well, this is allegedly the petition that the Liberal members had signed, but they had presented it to Trudeau today without any signatures on it. Listen, the Liberals are a bunch of cowards, and like I don't have any faith in the Liberal caucus, but I think what we learned today is there still is discontent. There will be discontent going forward, but the Liberals won't instigate anything. If something is instigated from the outside, there is a flank within the Liberal Party that I think that if he is pushed to the edge by someone else, they might push him off the last.
And here is the problem that's going on right now, is that if they try and get rid of Trudeau and it fails, well, then Trudeau's just going to lose the next election harder, because it's like the idea that you've wounded him, but you didn't get rid of him. It was the kind of the problem with Joe Biden in the U.S. It's that either you're going to leave him in place and let him run as the candidate, and I think he'd probably be doing better than Kamala Harris is doing right now. If you get rid of him clean, that's good. The worst scenario that the Democrats had, or if they went after Biden and Biden didn't quite leave, so now you've wounded him, had everyone say he can't run and he's too old and has a terrible record and whatnot, and then he's still running. That would be the worst scenario. And that's the scenario that looks likely for Justin Trudeau, is that the party, because they're probably too weak to really go completely, balls to the wall against Trudeau, that they're going to end up letting him stay in place, but they're still wounding him. But here's the BC tie-in. So do you know who's interested in becoming the next federal Liberal Party leader?
Yeah, the
Christy
lady,
Clark.
right?
Christy
Yeah.
Clark. She wants to be the next Liberal leader, and she's coming out saying, I want to help the Liberal Party no matter who's leading it. Just get rid of Pierre Poilievre. We need to beat him in the next election because he's bad for some reason. Obviously, she wants to be the leader. And the one thing that this might do, even though she's an absolute turkey of a candidate for the next federal Liberal leader, is that it at least kind of warms up the waters for other people to think, well, Christy Clark thinks she can be the next Liberal leader. Maybe Trudeau goes down and this lady ends up sneaking in. You're going to have someone else declare over here and maybe declare over there. Not declaring, but for some reason they've updated their website and it feels very leadership racy. And that's really what I think is going to be happening with. I guarantee if you go to Christy Clark's website and you type in / and then you start typing in different options, I guarantee you're going to find a platform on her website that's hidden behind the scenes that you can access. And I think this might be enough that you'll start to have a bit of momentum to get rid of Trudeau. I think Trudeau can more likely still stave it off, but this is still a gunshot wound he does not need to his leadership race, or sort of to his leadership of the party. Even as he was walking out of the caucus meeting, you could see him like, everything's great, guys. We're very, we're all together. And it was like a little bit too
Let me play
happy.
that. Let me play that. That video is so good.
It was like muscling through the fact he wants to kill somebody.
Yeah,
he
is this the
doesn't
Vince
look happy.
McMahon walk? Is this the Vince McMahon walk, Dan?
Shock Daniel again. There's Justin Trudeau.
The Liberal Party is strong and united.
Wait, go back and pause on him smiling there at the strong and united thing.
Listen,
We're very strong and
Justin Trudeau, you know it's
Strong
because
and united.
Look at this jackass.
We're very strong and united, guys.
it hurts
I
him
just
because
one
you
of my
know
MPs.
he wants to listen. If he was in front of a microphone and he didn't accuse Canada of being racist or say something about climate change, you know he's upset.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's when Trudeau's feeling good. He's like, I'm feeling good. The country's in tatters. The economy is going down. You're racist. You're racist. Trees. I'm Greta Thunberg. Peace out.
And there are so
right?
many MPs as they're asking them, hey, are you supporting Trudeau? And they're like, we're going to have many conversations on
Yes,
what the
I
leadership
wanted
of
to
the party
play
is gonna
one
be
of
like.
them. Nate Smith, he came out of the meeting and he said this. So I want to
This
hear.
guy, honestly, I kind of say first, this guy is like one of those, he actually runs his own podcast. I think he calls it like Uncommons or whatever. And I appreciate that as somebody who, if I was ever an MP, I'd probably keep doing a podcast for fun. The guy is both honest and as well a complete weasel at the same time. Have you ever seen that clip of him swearing at people in a committee meeting? Where he starts being like, you're challenging my effing integrity. This is BS. And it's like, he's the angriest vegan guy you'll ever meet.
Angry vegan. Let's listen to him. What he had to say after the caucus meeting.
Reflect on what he's heard from colleagues, and I think he's got to find some way to earn the trust of the colleagues who are expressing this frustration, and people are coming at it from different reasons for expressing that frustration. The second thing is to my colleagues, as the Prime Minister works to deliver a response to what he heard today, I think it's really important that you got to stand down the palace intrigue, and we can't have the knives in. We got to face the knives out, and we got to fight the real fight against Pierre Poilievre. And I don't know how interesting that is for you guys, but that's what I said.
Do you think the colleagues will do that? Do you think they'll stand down?
If there's a constructive effort to really respond to what was said in there, I hope so.
Do you think there's like a timeline that the Prime Minister needs to kind of get these things done, or at least some of them underway to show to those colleagues that there's actually progress?
Yesterday. I mean, especially on the campaign side, right? So, in fairness, the new national director is ready to present a 5-point plan. He couldn't do that today because other events overran that, but he's ready to present a plan. I think that's part of it. And then I think there's got to be a real reflection on, what he heard not only from me but from other colleagues, to say, how do I re-earn some of that trust, and how do I make sure that
I mean,
So
it is
it-
fascinating. The takeaways and why you can go in on it. For people, he's talking about re-earning trust. So he's confirmed that there was discontent, right? So we know there's discontent there, and he's didn't give 100% guarantee that there's any way to quell it, that this is fixable. He said, well, it's contingent on the prime minister listening and reflecting on what he hears today and whatever strategies, and then that could make it better. So it shows that there is something. That was my major takeaway. Wyatt?
The thing is too that the fact that the problem with the Liberal Party too, and this is something for everyone who thinks like Trudeau's going to stay in office because he's going to rig the next election. Do you think these guys act this way if they're going to rig anything? No, they're not. And the problem with the Liberal Party is that since Trudeau has come in, they've been so reliant on his brand, and this is actually the problem of the individual MPs being weak. That because they've been letting Trudeau do whatever he wants, Trudeau does whatever he wants. And if anything, it's kind of pathetic that these guys now have problems with it when it was totally okay before, and they were at least doing somewhat well in the polls. The thing is that these guys just do have no political instincts, because since the media is so on the side of the Liberals and the Liberal Party is the natural governing party of Canada, that I think it's not even Trudeau's fault that they're in this position. Obviously, he's part of it, but it's just the culture of the Liberal Party that has ended up putting them in this scenario.
yeah, I have a new candidate that I can propose for the Liberal Party of Canada. Let me. I'm
Omar
sorry.
Carter?
No. Gursevak Singh. Let me explain who Gursevak Singh is.
So close. I was so close.
So Gursevak was the guy who pulled out a gun at the Gurdwara parking lot, during the
I know him.
alleged extortion attempt. Then he also was arrested earlier in the year when he tried to smuggle drugs and 5 guns into Canada. Listen,
And he's a real
he's
estate
a real
agent.
estate agent. He also does
yeah.
an LMIA business. And Trudeau says, quote, expanding the pool is also a way to try to engage future voters, those too young to vote or who are not yet Canadian citizens, because this guy is not. He's the perfect candidate for the Liberal Party Prime Minister.
Why not? Why not? I'd rather be honest. If this is what we're gonna stand for as a party, might as well just
Honestly, he has as good of a chance as many other people, because if you look at the actual polling when it comes to replacements, Liberal Party candidates, whenever they have a hypothetical poll for replacing Trudeau and they pitch it to Liberal Party supporters, all these people poll worse than AIDS. Nobody wants to vote for them. Like Chrystia Freeland's at the top of the list with 13% support, and then you have Mark Carney at 11%, and then there's a big drop off to like 5%.
That's why I have said the next Liberal Party leadership race, and I've said this, so I can confirm this. I'm saying this for years, will be defined by a Corbynization. One person's going to come out of the woodwork and start ranting about the Jews, and that's going to drive the race. And that's when the race starts: is who's the first one to go, I'm going to defund Israel and Gaza, blah, 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 blah.
It's going to be like the anti, I think a good way of putting it is like the anti-neocon liberal, that the West is bad, that we have to stop supporting, India, we have to stop supporting Israel, we're Canadians who are fighting for, those dispossessed and whatnot, both in our borders and outside of our borders. And it's going to be a very NDP-looking Liberal Party, because Trudeau already was a very NDP liberal on many
next candidate.
issues. Yeah,
this is
right
my
there.
next prime ministerial candidate.
I was probably a cabinet minister right now if you pull
Right.
up.
I think
Can
she
you
also
explain what this flag is?
that's the Shahada.
Okay.
She is the next prime minister of Canada. I nominate her as the Liberal Party candidate, and maybe Gursevak can be the deputy prime minister. How about that?
Taliban, Khalistan,
Yes.
Kabbalistan,
Khal-Islamism.
Calibaniism, Caliban. I like it. Caliban. Ooh, that sounds. I think that's from a sci-fi.
Oh
something.
my God! What is
Taliban.
happening to this country?
We have the Caliban. Oh, that's the new liberal. That's 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 a good nickname for the Liberal or the NDP party. It's the Caliban. It's half Khalistani, half Taliban.
Oh man, this country is so entertaining. But yeah, now we'll just take a few questions. Okay, this is a good question. Wyatt, I want you to take this. I'm a new permanent resident. What do I do to contribute in Canadian politics? Excellent question.
Buy a party membership for the party most influential in your riding and vote for the least crazy candidate. So I would say the conservative, basically buy a conservative membership because conservatives are competitive everywhere right now, and vote for people who actually are like real, like I guess patriots in a certain sense. People who want small government, who are tough on terrorism, and who aren't like moral nihilists the way that the NDP and the Liberals are. You know, like prevent nutcases from getting in. Actually,
Daniel,
when I was
you
running,
also answer this.
when I was running in Signal Hill, I sold a lot of memberships to Indians from the south of Indian who recognized Daniel from television. I would just hold up his photo, like, "Hey, you know him? I know him. Do you want to buy a membership?" We'd actually have a discussion about policy, and they usually liked me too, obviously. But they didn't really know me because I'm not as prolific as Daniel. But they would actually buy memberships. It was cool.
Yeah, Daniel, I want you to answer this, and then I will answer this.
I don't know why it's right. Like if you want to, get involved in the party, get in politics. Like you want to add something else to it, well, you already do it. You're online, be part of the conversation. Don't be afraid to say the things you want to say. Like the biggest problem with the Hindu community right now is they're too afraid to say Khalistan.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be my added thing is learn to say Khalistan when you complain about Khalistanis.
Now I'll take it. So Udit, here's what I would do. If you are there and when there is a primary, right, for deciding the candidate, Udit, your membership will matter a lot during that primary. So this is what you will do to all the potential candidates. Let's say you have taken the membership or about to take the membership of the Conservative Party. When you are going to vote in the primary, you are going to ask each and every Conservative candidate, the first question will be, are you pro-Canada? That should be the first question. Naturally, I'm assuming that person would say yes. Are you pro-mass immigration, where everybody should come in? I'm assuming that person would say no. The third question to you ask is, are you pro-Khalistan? If that person says, I am against Khalistan, then you support that person. These three basic criteria. I am giving you specifics.
And
These
I would add too, if it's like a white politician, you ask them and they don't know what it is, you have to tell them to actually look into it and then get back to you, because useful idiots are what a lot of politicians end up being, because they don't know it. It's an ethnic community thing. Should I say anything? And then they end up enabling everyone. But the thing is that enabling a normal person and a crazy person just makes the world more crazy, because obviously we enable normal people to do normal things. You can't treat them as like positions on the issue.
How about this? Next level, Udit. Tell them to make a video on their social media or write a letter and post it on their social media where they categorically oppose the idea of Khalistan, and see how the fun starts. Udit, I want you to do that. Remember these things that we have told you. If you are a Canadian permanent resident, this is what you're supposed to do. Well, Daniel, somebody wants us to come to Vancouver. Well, how about buy our tickets? And we'll come to Vancouver.
Get me out there. And I have some ideas if I was out in BC. I've told you I wouldn't
this
say.
This is such a nasty comment, but so true. Khalistanis, jihadis have an alliance, support each other's fanatical causes, and become adopted kids of white liberals. Oh my god! But that's so true.
That
happens all over. And have you ever noticed like the more pro-IRA Catholic areas in Northern Ireland, they also fly Palestinian flags everywhere? Because if you're going to be in favor of your terrorism, you got to be in favor of their terrorism too.
Terrorists be terrorizing.
Yeah, there's a terrorist alliance, because you can't say, well, no, that was awful. But us, putting a pipe bomb in someone's car in Belfast is okay. Yeah. You got to be like, well, they're fighting for liberation too.
Yeah, so this was a reaction to your comment about the Hindu thing. So no, this is actually a very wrong answer, that Hindus are not united while they are diverse across India, but Sikhs belong to one caste of Punjab. No. First of all, Raju, I have actually got the entire list of gurdwaras in Ontario on my laptop. And I know that even inside the Gurdwara network of Canada, there is a lot of diversity, even on the base of caste. Yes, the Khalistanis, overwhelmingly, all of them belong to the Jat community. I know that, but all Jats are not Khalistanis, so let's not generalize. And there are other Gurdwaras also. Like I'll give you an example of the ones who do what was that, the
Well,
Amritwani.
I was also told in BC, because we kind of saw, I just kind of saw this from a little bit of a distance. They say that the temple attendance is way down because, again, you
Yeah.
get some guys who only showed up in the past 10 years who are big Calistanis, and all they do is go to work and go to temple, and they end up taking over the temple elections because people don't really want to be around them. So nobody actually shows up to temple anymore because they just want to stay home and watch football. And they used to show up, but now it becomes this intense political thing. So all the people just stay home. They're still Sikh, but they don't go to the Sikh temple anymore because the people running it are like weirdo fundamentalists.
Yeah, they're not.
These aren't all of them, but these
And
are the
listen,
ones who have lower attendance.
there are real life consequences. I'm going to state this very openly. If you are going to go to separatist gurdwaras, the Indian government will consider you to be an active threat to India when you come to India, right? These people come to India all the time. So last year, a lot of these so-called people, last year or the year before that, some of them, India cancelled their entry to India. They couldn't come to India anymore. What we have is the OCI, Overseas Citizenship of India. Let's say if you're a Canadian passport holder and you are an Indian origin person, you can actually get what is the closest version of a permanent residency of India, right? It's called a OCI, only for Indian origin people. India cancelled 100 plus OCIs because these people were, dancing around, waltzing around with Khalistanis. And the message went around very fast that India is taking action now. And listen, what is India supposed to do? Not even protect its
Well,
sovereignty.
Israel does this rightfully so. That if you go to, if you're involved in any organization that's anti-Israel to the extreme of being basically justifying terrorism, they won't let you in the country. They won't let Ilhan Omar in. They won't let AOC into the country because they're obviously threats to national security. Not that they're going to do something violent themselves, but it normalizes violence to allow people who
They'll engage
justify
in
it in their country.
anti-Israel activity. They'll join protests and cause disruptions and use their political status to instigate diplomatic pressures.
It makes their national security look weak that this person also walks around basically saying all of this is awful, and that the Israel looks like it's basic, and especially in the Middle East, you end up looking weak and pathetic that these people are allowed in to disrupt everything, and you're like, well, it looks like it's a great time to commit a bombing because considering they can't even keep these jokers out of their country, I can maybe like get away with something right now. Again, it's like in a lot of these places around the world, weakness tends to breed more violence.
And let me put it this way. Daniel saw Hindu Sikh unity and love firsthand when I took him to the temple. There was just this beautiful, cute little Sikh kid going inside the temple.
There are a bunch of Sikhs at the Hindu temple.
Yeah, it's very normal. This is normal life for us. I find it so weird that there are gurdwaras over here, which I call zombie land gurdwaras, that I can't go. Because in Punjab, in India, we don't even listen to these scenarios.
Yeah. What was funny is I actually had a friend I was visiting with in when I was back still in BC, and we were I think we were in this bar, and he's just an extremely outgoing person. So he's Sikh himself. He just walk up to any guy with a turban because he guaranteed that guy's Sikh, and just said, "Are you a Calistani? Are you a Calistani?" But we'll just ask people out of nowhere, point blank. A lot of these guys work from India in the past 5 years or so, and they'd be like, "Oh, no, I'm not a loser." And like these people don't like that sort of crap. It was funny. They were just asking guys sitting around watching MMA, "Are you a Calistani?" "No," and they'd be like that. It was like offensive to them that you would assume it, and it's all younger guys. Yeah.
Abhijit Iyer Mitra has laid a very severe accusation. He's saying,
okay, I get some of these words, but you can.
So he's saying the Hanud and the Yahud are conspiring together. Well, there is a Christian here too. So I don't know, how do we make this this version? So we have a Jew Hindu and Christian together on the podcast conspiring
I
against
don't know.
Khalistan.
I don't know. Christians.
Wyatt is an Indian agent. That's it.
Yeah.
Can we call him a canood? Because I don't know what the
Canood.
actual. Yahud, Hanud,
Yahud, Hanud,
Canood.
Canood. I don't know.
Well, I'm a Baptist, so maybe it's because I'm on the maybe it's because of Nagaland that I'm now on the side of India.
Yeah. So yeah. This is to be the funniest. For Trudeau, Khalistan is a part of the LGBTQ community. I don't know.
I mean, that
Oh,
would
man.
be a pretty hilarious move, and I'd actually kind of respect it if Justin Trudeau just put like Khalistan in the LGBTQ.
LGBTQ. Okay.
Plus, we have gays, lesbians, trans, queers, Khalistanis, and
Oh
You
my
have
God.
to respect. You have to respect that the way that they choose to get themselves screwed.
Yeah.
didn't.
No, this is a good comment. I want you guys to ponder about this. Jastinder is not the problem, but the symptom of ultra-liberalism and wokeism of Canada. Till that changes, Khalistanis will keep finding support. That's a good comment.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I do think there is some sort of positive feedback loop between the wokeness and Justin Trudeau. So, find a positive.
It is
feedback loop,
always the
not a bad one.
victim class. It's the constant focus on victim classes. You say you're a victim, you've been attacked, even though you have nothing to do with any repression that might have happened. Well, you're a representative of the victim community, so we're going to come around you, give you a hug, and like act like you're like a small child who has no agency. And that's happened with the Hamas people, the Khalistani people, and even the CCP guys. The CCP end up getting like, we're a minority in this country, so you can't criticize us for being obviously in league with the CCP government in China.
Yeah, that's true. All right, I think I've pretty much covered every single thing. Yeah, somebody had said that considering how things are changing in India, so new Sikh migrants in the West have stronger ties to India and hate being mistaken for Khalistanis more than the previous generation of the Sikh community to avoid trouble in India too, because India is a rising superpower. But before I go, listen, as I'm kind of half here, half there, but I honestly I care for Canada too, and as I'm with you too. How is India going to, how is Canada going to come out of this mess? This is going to be the last bit, and then we'll wrap up, because I shared just a few statistics so that Canadians understand the gravity of the situation, because I don't think most Canadians are able to digest what's happening and what Justin Trudeau has done. So, these are just new reports out of S&P Global India. India is set to become the third largest economy by 2030-31, and they have they have changed the growth rate projections to 8.2% in the financial year from the earlier 7.3. Our requirement of oil is going to go up from 2 million barrels a day to 7 million barrels a day. And emerging markets by 2035, emerging markets are China, India, Vietnam, and the Philippines, are going to be 65% of the global economic growth. Now, can I ask two Canadians who are born and raised here, what in the living world is your prime minister thinking by, okay, right now we have a trade of, let's say, $6 to $7 billion, right? Between
What
India
is he
and Canada.
thinking? I'll explain it right now. You think Justin Trudeau is thinking of this? Justin Trudeau, you have to understand who his political idol is. His political idol is Greta Thunberg. He wants to be Greta Thunberg. He wants to go. He saw Greta on a
Literally.
boat talking about trees and and getting all this attention, and all the global institutions being like, "Oh, Greta, wow, she's so." That's what he thinks of. He wants to be the former Prime Minister of Canada, jet setting or kayaking around the world, and to go and say, "Oh, he's green," and he has this thing that he's going to do these progressive things, and he's just going to be able to go. Justin Trudeau is here, and everyone goes,
Yeah, no, Justin Trudeau only thinks of himself in sweeping Instagram video type shots where the camera starts up here and it swings around him as he's saying, oil's bad and we need to like live in trees if we're to survive the 21st century or whatever. And think about it from the oil and gas perspective, as someone in Alberta, like, yeah, you're talking about the need for oil and gas in India, and we're not providing it. Why? And now we're definitely not going to be providing it with Justin Trudeau sticking around. And maybe if Polyev becomes the prime minister, you still have the Indian government who's going to be like, we still are a little bit chapped about what's been going on. No, I mean, like,
No,
we
how
still
can
want to
we
put it on
trust?
hold.
Listen, the only way out of this is Trump wins, and you have Trump who doesn't continue this anti-India leftist nonsense in the States. So the American pressure to sort of continue this is gone. Polyev wins in Canada, and after a year of Trump and Modi, it turns out Polyev goes to Modi. Modi gets a slap on the
This
wrist.
is what scares
and then
me.
Polyev takes a
Once
slap
again,
on the wrist.
This
Right?
is what scares me. If these are the faces of the Conservative Party, when these people come to India, you think India is going to trade with Canada? Listen, India is going to, in the next decade, India is going to be more than a $10 trillion economy. Canada should be hedging and betting on India when they have the third or the fourth. I don't know. Please fact check me on this. I think the third or the fourth largest Indian diaspora of the world is in this damn country. This is the opportunity for Canada to milk it. And I say this as an Indo-Canadian. And shame on Canada. And I say this with full responsibility. Shame on Canada. They're robbing the average good. Canadians are the nicest people I've come across in my life. And I've traveled the world. And then you have Muppets like this who are going to be part of the Conservative Party. You think India is going to deal, Daniel, when we have these Muppets?
No, they're not going to deal with I mean, it depends how strong India is. Like, I'm just saying, the only way out of this is double conservative government in North America, and then we all just decide this is a bit silly. Modi, to make it go away, Modi takes a slap on the wrist. Polyev takes a slap on the wrist for the Khalistani stuff. We then sweep that under the rug, and we say, okay, we need to get oil into India. Once, India needs oil from Canada, and Canada needs to provide oil to India, then all of a sudden our economic interests in Khalistan become, get this the hell out of here. Then once there's actual interest economically to do something about Khalistan, Canada starts to do something about the Khalistanis, then relationship goes to a good mode. But there are a lot of roadblocks potentially in the way there. But that's your best case scenario is Trump win, Polyev win. We all kind of sweep this under the rug. India takes a slap on the wrist. Canada takes a slap on the wrist. I'll write a letter to the UN myself, okay? Blah, 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 blah,
The
blah.
thing is, too, that what people, and obviously it's not going to be your audience who, Kushal, who are confused around this, but you get a lot of people being like, well, it's their free speech to advocate for this stuff in Canada. And it's like, sure. And the thing is, there is a portion of the community who just thinks the idea of Khalistan's neat, but they're not actually hardcores and they don't really care. But the thing is that it's not just, they're trying to suppress people from thinking things that the Indian government doesn't like. No. If an Indian minister tried to walk down the street in many of these cities, just neighborhoods, they'd probably get killed. They'd probably have to try and beat them to death. If they had no bodyguards around, walk down the street, they'd probably get killed. Same thing with many Israeli officials. If they tried to walk through certain areas of Mississauga and Brampton, probably get killed. And so that's a big litmus test is if your country, a Russian minister walks through Canada, even with all the people who are, rightfully in favor of Ukraine, they're not going to get killed. There's like people who advocate for things, but they're not going to lash out in violence.
I'm anti-Russian. I'd heckle him. If someone said that's a Russian foreign minister walking by, I'd go, you suck.
Yeah. Tons of people that suck around the world. But the problem is that there's a difference between saying, I think the Indian government's bad for this, that other reason, blah, blah, and I'm advocating that people in India start voting this way because I think it'd be better. Fill your boots. That's fine. The problem when it becomes when you're training people to fire AK-47s in the woods, and now people are wondering if it's okay for government officials to even visit your cities. Just Paul Atwal is a prime example of how it's not safe to visit some of these cities because of these nutcases who will take a shot at anyone who's even associated with the Indian government, and it would be, a nice person to put on your mantle as like somebody that you got. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I just want to back you by listen to the statement. Notice how Justin Trudeau and Melanie Joly have been doing press conference after press conferences. And look at the Indian response. The Prime Minister has not even uttered a word. Prime Minister of India. Jaishankar has not done any press conference. He was on a summit. And you know what hurt me the most is the journalist who was asking, He said, yeah, let's first talk about the lightweight. And he insulted Canada. This was an old Indian minister, an old Indian style, they would have never even smirked. They would have defended Canada. Things have become so bad. This is so unlike Mr. Jaishankar. He smirked. That's how pissed off India is. But listen to what Jaishankar has said for 4 minutes because it's worth, and then we'll wrap up.
Where Canada is concerned, I think there are some very specific issues. I think a lot of people know that. You are right. If you look at the people to people, if you look at the business relationship, it's very, very strong. For a lot of people, it is very difficult to imagine that we could reach the state of relations that we have today. So why has this happened? I would say definitely there is some history, for the non-Indians in the room, I should remind you that in the 1980s, Indian Air India plane was blown up flying out of Canada, and in many ways that's a kind of a overhang because it wasn't just an incident; it was a reflection of something which was going on there. But at a time when many people felt that, look, that's all behind us, I think developments in the politics went in a different direction. And we are seeing to some degree the consequences of that. So again, I give you the first observation that, the broad attitude versus the specific. And I'll give you 2-3 examples of it. Canada has just they asked us to subject our High Commissioner to a police inquiry, you can say, and we chose to withdraw the High Commissioner and diplomats. Now, look at it. They seem to have a problem if Indian diplomats are even trying to make efforts to find out what is happening in Canada on matters which directly pertain to their welfare and security. But look what happens in India. Canadian diplomats have no problem going around collecting information on our military, on our police, profiling people, targeting people to be stopped in Canada. So apparently the license that they give themselves is totally different from the kind of restrictions that they impose on diplomats in Canada. Or even take the press. I'm at a press event. Now, when we tell them, saying, look, you have people openly threatening leaders of India, diplomats of India. Sometimes the threat is not just verbal, it's physical. So their answer is freedom of speech. Okay? Now, when Indian journalists make social media comments, if you threaten the Indian High Commissioner, he is supposed to accept it as freedom of speech. But if an Indian journalist says the Canadian High Commissioner walked out of South Block looking very grumpy, it is apparently foreign interference. Now, how, look at the, this is not even, double standards are a very mild word for it. So, look, there is this thing that we will do it differently at home, we will do it differently abroad, we will do it our way, but that doesn't apply to you. So I think these are the larger, I would say, adjustments which have to happen in this changing world.
Basically, everything Wyatt said was shared by the Minister of External Affairs of India.
Confirm
Literally
Wyatt is the
every
External Minister
point.
of India.
Wyatt is the Indian
They
agent.
told me to say that.
Jay Shankar is a Wyatt operative.
Yeah.
Yes,
Shankar is
Wyatt,
implanted
you Indian
by
agent,
Wyatt
we knew
Grateful.
it.
Yeah, logical thoughts are now Indian are now Indian propaganda, which
No,
I
but
guess is great for India. Being able to think logically is now considered a Indian tactic.
And I will give Daniel the last word, because I want to stand up for Daniel here. And this pathetic attempt, and I want to condemn the Globe and Mail first. This pathetic attempt by the Globe and Mail to target Daniel like this, by writing this, by choosing to quote expert sources critical of Mr. Trudeau, such as Canadian journalist Daniel Boardman. The outlets have taken a pro-India editorial slant that is evident in their headlines. What the hell, man? Daniel, you have to have time to defend yourself. Go ahead, because I wanted to end by you defending yourself.
Listen,
Daniel
in
didn't
terms of
even
what
tell me
Canadian
he was
mainstream,
attacked by the Globe and Mail. That's hilarious. I love it.
yeah, listen, in terms of Canadian mainstream media attacks on me, this is actually pretty good. Like, yeah, this is them trying to be catty, but one, they're describing me as an expert source and a journalist. Okay, that's better than like a conspiracy theory, racist, blah 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 blah. That they can try and turn you into if you're not part of the mainstream things. And yeah, I love it. I've never been to India in my life, but by quoting me as a source critical of Justin Trudeau, as I put in my tweet, 85% of the country wants Justin Trudeau gone. So 85% of the country is Trudeau critical. And by choosing me, who's representative of 85% of Canadians, instead of the 15% that work for the CBC, India is doing a foreign interference. So if this is foreign interference, sure, it's me. You caught me. Just like I say to the Khalistanis who accuse me of being an Indian agent, if the Globe and Mail, National Post, Toronto Star, CBC is watching this, yes. I'm behind everything. Literally everything that's ever happened in this country since 1991 from any country. I am responsible. I take responsibility for everything everyone's ever said on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. It was all me. And even though I've never been to India, I control India. Modi is my vice president. I am India.
So this is disgusting, that the way they target you. It's obvious they are monitoring social media, the Khalistanis, and every time you share something, they're monitoring Indian media.
Right.
And that foreign interference report that was to
I'm going to come out with it. I know for a fact. I now know for a fact that they're setting it up. There's going to be at some point down the next year, if Justin Trudeau's not in office and this foreign interference thing keeps going, at some point, someone in the government's going to accuse me of being an Indian agent. I know it. I've already made my peace with it.
disgusting. They call journalists like Shiv Arur, who has been so critical of the Modi government. Shiv has criticized Modi so many times. I have been following and admiring. Daniel can vouch for this. I rarely go to Indian media. I avoid it like a plague. I only went because Shiv called me. I broke my code for Shiv because I have so much respect for the man. Hey, what nonsense is this? Shiv Arur is Indian interference. ANI is one of the largest media platforms of the world.
That's like saying the Associated Press. If the Associated, let's like the Associated Press covering a story on the foreign side, which they do because they're a news outlet. They're the Associated Press, and then the country that's being covered claims this is foreign interference.
And it's coming from whom? A country that controls media itself by interfering in every single thing. I mean,
that's the thing, is that Indian media never comes across like it's filtered and trying to get the Indian government's narrative through. If they did, they would do what the CBC does. They would pre-screen interviews. You'd have to tell them exactly what you're going to say before you were allowed onto the air. India, you can just blast. You can just go for it. You know what I mean? You can just say whatever you want on the air. This is not a pro-government.
You've been on Indian media. Did they ever tell you to say what they want to say or anything?
I've been on right before. Yeah, I got to make fun of Thomas Mulcair on Indian TV. I know that they don't they don't hold back on what you can say and do. But like while Thomas Mulcair was on the segment with me, but you'll have people just yelling at each other on Indian media. It's not, there is no filters. It's like Jerry Springer when it comes to political interviews.
Yeah.
The thing is that, and so like, yeah, these people, do they think that every news outlet's pro BJP? Because they do a crappy job at it, apparently, because they don't really buoy them up very well in some of these elections where Congress makes gains. You're going to have outlets that are more pro-Congress. You're going to have outlets that are more pro-BJP. You're going to have ones that are more kind of down the middle, and they have a lot of hosts from all sorts of different sides of things. You're going to have regional outlets who don't care about either of those parties. People in Canada don't understand how India works. So when they say Daniel Boardman, who has taken the Indian's perspective, what Indian perspective? What are you talking about?
It's not even the Indian perspective. I just critical of Trudeau. Like that's my thing. Yeah,
No,
and
Dan has gone on
you.
Barkha Dutt's show. Barkha is so openly critical of Narendra Modi. Barkha has what 1.3 million subscribers on Mojo Story. Daniel's gone on the Print. Print is very critical of Modi all the time. Print is the largest digital platform in India. The Scroll and the Wire will not invite Daniel because Daniel's pro-Israel and they're pro-Palestine. There you go. I spilled the beans for you. That's why they'll not invite Daniel. And Daniel's been on all mainstream media outlets. I mean, what do you want to do? Obviously, media is controlled by government in many ways in India through different ways. But that's been the story under Congress, under BJP, because they are fed through government advertisement, like big ads, right? So beyond a point, if you speak against the government, even regional parties, do you know India has regional party media channels? Like down south, you have media houses that are only spewing the line of the media regional party, which is the regional Tamil outfit or the Kannada outfit or the Telugu outfit. India is the Wild West. We have thousands of newspapers and media outlets.
And the producers, like it's a microcosm of the Indian bureaucracy. It's 1,000 chimpanzees and 1,000 different typewriters. That's how all these shows are being put together. There's 3 people from the same network calling you. You're all confused. Like, so when I'm like trying to be booked by multiple networks, it's impossible. Like, and you're just kind of
every time they contact me, which I haven't been able to help, like take an interview or anything like that, because I've been working for a party. So obviously there's a conflict issue where when you work for parties, genuinely they don't want you jumping on every single interview because you work for them. But like, you'll have people assuming that everyone in Canada lives in Toronto time, and they give you the most obtuse times of day to come on, like 3:30 in the morning or whatever, to come on their show. I'm like, I don't feel like staying up that late or waking up for that time. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole idea. People don't understand this. And Daniel has one of the rare accolades in Indian media. He went on television and fought with Rajdeep Sardesai.
First thing I did at Indian TV was fought with was put a look on Rajdeep's face, but it was just like, what is this white boy saying right now?
Yeah, and that was, and I remember that.
Give him the true title that he is India's Ben Shapiro.
and people don't understand. It's just disappointing what has happened. Anyways, we'll end the podcast today. This has been one of the longer Canada episodes, but this was a lot of fun. Wyatt, thanks a lot for coming, and we're gonna make this a regular feature. We'll cover elections in Canada regularly, so that, and believe me, Indians love one thing. The one content that does well in India is when you cover elections. Indians love politics.
That's why it's thing. Subscribe to the National Telegraph.
Yeah.
Why it breaks down polls.
Especially if you live here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. So in the description of this podcast, whether you're listening to the audio version or you're watching this on YouTube or you're watching this on Facebook too, you'll have Wyatt's X handle, Daniel's X handle. All the details are there. Support both of them. They do great work. And as far as I am there, please follow me on X2. If you want to buy my book, please buy my book. If you want to send donations, one-time donations in India, you can use UPI, kushalmehra at ICICI. If you want to send one-time donations in Canada, you can use Interact for kushalmehra81 at gmail.com. If you want to support me on the long run, please join the membership program of Cārvāka podcast, whether on YouTube or on Patreon, does not matter. If you can't do anything, just like this video, subscribe to the Cārvāka podcast YouTube channel, leave a comment in the comment section. If you're an audio listener, leave a rating. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, take care.